Yeah, I've seen footage from just like an office or something. Like the guys in, they look like hazmat suits or fumigation suits. Or
Sorry, now you can hear me. Ugh. Man, that's so annoying. Ugh. Yeah, on OBS it had a my microphone was like muted by default. I don't know why it does that. Ugh. All right. Well, let's see. Weeaboo Jones and Paulo Amorim. You guys are new. I haven't seen you before, so nice to see you. Welcome. That reminds me. Ashley, do you remember Raw Unplanned Dance?
no.
You don't? He used to appear in the chats like all the time on both my streams and on Prince's, and I just remembered
Oh,
him yesterday, and
maybe.
I was like, where? I was like, where the hell are you? Where did he go? He just like disappeared. Anyway, because I like remembered the person, and then I was like, what was his name again? It was like some awesome name. And I was like, oh yeah, it was Raw Unplanned Dance. So shout out to him. I guess he's not gonna hear it unless he wanders back over. But it's been a while. Anyway, so yeah, so half the conversation was we talked about these virtual assistants, which was whatever. I don't know. Like I think there's a lot of potential there, and I think that the popularity of love dolls is going to make people want more customization and demand more customization, especially on like personality with these, which I think would be really cool, right? Because like remember when like Tamagotchis and Gigapets were hot shit? Like now all the children that played with those are adults, and we can have that again, except it's like this really cool thing that's like a person, you know?
Well, one of the things that I used to speculate about was that maybe with machine learning AI, so there's this series of fantasy books called His Dark Materials where every person carries around what's called in the universe a demon, which is basically like a spirit animal. And it's like that, it's a representation of your personality that fixes shape as you become an adolescent. And it's sort of like a perpetual friend that goes with you, like follows you everywhere. You can't be separated without using, demonic technology, which is considered to be this really grievous evil thing, and that's a central part of the story. And I was thinking about maybe at some point it'll be possible to basically implant, like through neurochipping or whatever the correct nomenclature would be, um, basically an AI companion directly into people's brains, which will have a convincing personality, seem like an actual being, even if it isn't, even if really it's just a zombie, that'll learn as you develop and become an adult, and it'll basically just will have these internal companions, so it'll almost be like having two consciousnesses inside a skull, and that would maybe solve some loneliness problems of modern society. I mean, I guess people would say it's kind of Brave New World, but it's an innovative solution, I guess.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. There's a lot of things related to this that make most people uncomfortable that I think would be really cool. Like the idea that you have like your AirPods and you have like contact lenses that have like overlays you can add for like augmented reality type things. And then it's all just like Bluetooth style connected to each other so that you just have like this thing that can just like talk to you. And then like imagine you're just like walking around and you could actually have like your walking or driving or whatever directions like project onto the path in front of you and illuminate things. Like it's scary if you think of it malfunctioning, but like in theory it working is really really cool. But then people will say, "Oh, well, what if it gets hacked and then they can like make screeching noises in your ear and blind you or whatever?" And I don't know. I guess that would be bad, but like the potential for it seems really really cool.
You could say this with a lot of technology, though. I mean, I guess there is a scaling issue, but like, should we uninvent nuclear weapons because of the problems that has, or even should we be less intelligent so that we're less able to make the weapons with which to kill each other? Like, um, Yeah, I guess it's kind of subjective where you draw that line, and a lot of people are have status quo bias.
No, exactly. And what they do is, it's pure emotion, right? It's whatever they're emotionally comfortable with. You know, it's ridiculous to question that. But if it's something like new or weird or whatever, then it's so reasonable to question it. And like I think it's weird that people don't like take a step back and think like, what's the implication of like this rule I'm imposing? You know. I'm getting some. Okay, looks like we're still
Yeah,
good. But let's see. Use a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done any streams, so like I have to. I'm like dusting off a lot of this stuff. Um, Yeah, it says stream status poor. I wonder if I can. Oh, I can't switch the stream key now. Okay, so I'll use the one I made before. That's like a lower quality one. Whatever. We'll
you know,
just see how it works.
I didn't realize until very recently that Chew on Head had a serious business channel. It's called Brainlet. I don't know
Oh
when
yeah, yeah, I
she
saw
came up
it,
with that.
and yeah, yeah, I saw a little bit of that, and it's kind of like what it was expected. I mean, the thing is, like when I first started watching her, she was kind of making stuff like that, and then she kind of backed off from it because I think she just doesn't like really like to engage so much. She likes to just make silly things, and I don't know.
With what? Um, I can hear an echo.
Yeah, I think that's Merchant.
Interesting.
Well, because we could hear him before. I wonder if he took his headset off. Oh yeah, I think the part where I was talking about Streamyard, I was silent during. Um, yeah,
Uh,
because he suggested using that, but like I'm gonna have to like take a look at it, and I think you probably need to register for it to use it and everything. So yeah, I'm gonna like do that another time. But
you
Streamyard
know,
will probably be an improvement over Google Hangouts. We're probably some of the last frickin' people to be using Google Hangouts, so that might be an improvement. We'll see.
Shoe on Head is 158 centimeters tall. I found this out recently.
Well,
Like,
I mean that's short, right? I always forget.
it's 5'2".
Yes, I mean, but for a girl, it doesn't even
Um,
matter.
but like, what doesn't even matter?
For a girl, it doesn't even matter as long as you're like not a midget. But even if you are a midget, I think you're probably still fine.
Well, like, yeah, provided that you don't look clinically short, even if you're 5 foot or 4'11" or something, it's not really a problem. But um, I remember she made a video where she was talking about height, and she said that so her boyfriend's like 6'3", and she claimed that even if he was 5'3", she would still be with him. And I just I thought it was very amusing that she thought like she could know that, like retroactively. I find it unlikely, to be honest, personally. That I mean that part of the reason she was attracted to his height, but I don't know. Like I was looking at Danny DeVito and his, he has children, Danny DeVito, and including a male child, which is quite tragic. Um, can you still hear me,
Yeah, I
Derek?
can still hear you.
Yeah, so Danny DeVito is like 4'10", and he has two daughters who are 5 feet, and a son who's 5'1". Um, the thing is that because of genetic recombination, the most likely height for a son between parents who are his height and his wife who's 5 foot, the his son, the predicting his height, the height of male offspring of parents with just based on taking the average and then adding 5 inches to account for the gender difference. He should have been 5'3", or could have been, but no, his son's only 5'1", and it's really just tragic. Like,
Oh
it's a
yeah, because
pity that
that 2 inches I think matters a lot more when you're in the 5 foot range.
yeah, but like it's a shame that they didn't have pre-implantation genetic screening to make their kids taller because it's looking at them just next to normal height people, like Danny DeVito, who's 4'10" with his 5 foot wife and daughters, and his 5'1" son. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I'm glad I'm not any taller than I am, but I used to wish that I was just a little bit shorter. I always felt like I was just a little bit too tall, which I think not many people think that.
Well, especially not men,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
think. But
But well,
like,
I guess mostly, I guess some men who are like insanely tall, then like they obviously would kind of maybe probably prefer, um,
well, it's
unless they play
interesting
basketball or
because
something.
there are different. Yeah, actually, on that, there are different forms of gigantism. So normally, gigantism of the kind that people are used to thinking about, where people get insanely tall, is the kind where someone has a genetic defect which causes them to overproduce growth hormone, and they end up being mildly deformed. You know, they have like huge, the lower thirds of their faces look out oversized, this kind of thing. And you get people like Robert Waldo, or I forget how his surname was pronounced, but you know who I'm talking about. He was almost 9 feet tall. Um, but then there are also people who just have an unusually high concentration of height-related alleles, like 3, 4, 5 standard deviations above the norm. This people are exponentially smarter than others. Like they just happen to get a very unusually high number of those genes, and those people are usually healthy. Like that, they don't die exceptionally early. Their bodies are well proportioned. They look normal. They just happen to be insanely tall. And the tallest living example of this, or the tallest two that I can think of, there's an American, and this is known because I think their genomes were actually screened to see if they had any anomalies, and they didn't. So there's Paul Bradley, this American basketball player. He's 7'6", and a British basketball player called Paul Sturgis, who is 7'8".
That's
Yeah,
ridiculous. I can't even imagine. Like, yeah.
yeah. I forget what his. Let me just look up Paul Sturgis shoe size. So his shoe size. It says his shoe size is 19. I guess UK 19. I don't know what that would translate into in like America, but yeah, he must have to have everything custom made. Oh, and it says he eats 7 calories a day.
Wait, seven?
That's just what he has to. Yeah, 7,000 calories a day. That's
Oh, I
what
thought
he
you said
has to eat
seven,
just
and
to
I was like,
maintain his body
how?
weight.
7,000. Okay, I mean maybe. Oh my god,
Yeah.
I've been eating like nothing because I can't spend any money. Um, like yesterday, I had there are these little like fried chicken packets you can get from like the grocery store that are like not the grocery store, not even the grocery store, like the Circle K. Do you have Circle K in Europe?
No, not in Britain at least. I don't think.
Okay, yeah, I've only seen them in Asia. I thought they were K circles before because their logo is a K in a circle, so I just read that as K. And then they're like, no, that's their logo. It's their logo, and then the word circle, and then K. So it's Circle K. They're like, you're an idiot for calling it K Circle. And I was like, well, they put their stupid logo, which is literally a K in a circle at the front of it, so you read it as K. But anyway, they're great. I love them. I prefer them to 7-Eleven, even though I'm also a fan of 7-Eleven. But they have little fried chicken meals, which are
We
keto friendly. They're fried chicken, but they still have not so many carbs, so they're still pretty good. They still fall within my Cheeto diet, and I can get like two of them for $20 here, which is like $3, and that's a decent amount of little fried chicken nuggets. And then I eat them with my McDonald's sauce packs that I've saved.
I
So
don't think we have 7-Eleven in the UK. I kind of wish we did because it sounds quite nice and convenient.
Oh, they're all the same. All gas stations are the same. I mean, really,
What's
right?
7-Eleven? I don't know.
Yeah, all convenience stores are basically the same. But 7-Eleven has this mystique about it because did you ever see the whole 7-Eleven nationalism thing? You recall there was this old video from like I think it
Sorry,
was
you
like
cut out. So
oh so
I
so
heard.
this was a while back. There was this actually I think the article was on like Stormer or something like but it was 7-Eleven nationalism. They were sharing this video that these guys recorded of like they were hanging out at the 7-Eleven at like 2 in the morning or whatever. And I forgot what year it was. It was like either the 80s or like maybe the very early 90s or something. But like it was all these different people there. They're just talking to people, just like being retards, walking around with their camera, saying like, "Hey, what you buying? What you doing here?" Blah blah blah. They're talking to people, and everybody was so friendly and having fun. And like it's so crazy because you could never have that now, right? Because like now the whole atmosphere and environment of like a convenience store at 2 a.m. in America is like that's like scary, right? Like it's considered a dangerous job to work like at one of those convenience stores late at night. And like they're noting like look at how things have changed, blah blah blah. So that was this whole 7-Eleven nationalism, little mini movement that was out there. I was saying like why can't things be back to how things were in this, which things are kind of like that here late at night. But I
Interesting.
can't talk to anyone because most of them won't speak English.
Yeah,
Or like what are we
like,
gonna talk about? I don't know. But anyway. What was I? Why did
they're
I
any
even mention
good.
the Circle K? Oh yeah, no, yeah. So we talked about. You said that guy eats like 7,000 calories. I have to like. I'm like going through all of my dry foods, and I'm just like, okay, I bought this can of Spam like last year. I guess I'll eat that today. And but like the thing is I don't know what the right balance is because I'm not going outside. Mostly, I'm just sitting, so I'm not using many calories. But it also means I don't get tired. So I've been like awake for like way longer. Like I can't control when I go to sleep. I think that I'm starting to go into ketosis because I have a little bit of that like fatty breath, which I think is fine, except that can make you sick. So maybe I shouldn't risk that. Maybe I should find some carbs to eat. I think I have some like muesli, whatever, however you pronounce it.
Muesli.
Muesli, is that how you pronounce it? Okay, I have some of that, but it's very bland. I don't know.
Yeah, I think my mother likes muesli, or at least she used to. Oh, by the way, I just sent you the link to the to Paul Sturgis.
Paul Sturgis. He's so tall. This reminds me of like so many of the things that determine if a man is desirable are shit that like he literally can't control at all.
Well,
Right? It's his height
he's
and his
definitely
and how big his dick is, right? Those are like two very important factors.
Paul Sturgis is definitely not desirable at 7'7". Like, that's a bit much. Although he does have a girlfriend, so like he's not an incel. Probably less likely to be incel than someone who's 5'2".
Oh wow, 87. He's pretty young. He's only a few years older than me.
Yeah, he weighs 325 pounds.
I always thought that like smaller people were preferable to larger people because you're always one person. So then if you're like exceptionally fat or exceptionally tall, then that means you're like less efficient, right? Cuz like per matter, it's like less human. So like in theory, we should like evolve into like shorter beings and then that just becomes the new normal.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a
Fuck.
theory about that behind Yoda, that the Yoda species um like that basically they're kind of like humans except like even more like brain oriented, which is why like they're babies for like 100 fucking years or whatever. It was a video I watched about Baby Yoda and like the theory behind it, which was kind of interesting.
Well, the other thing is that smaller people probably give off. Well, smaller people require less energy and give off less heat. So if you wanted to maximize for population size, you might want to make people a little bit smaller, because of lower calorie demands and lower heat.
Right. Looks like I disconnected for a little bit. I guess I can't really do anything about that, so I'm just gonna have to let it go. Okay. Actually, that's an interesting argument. Is the eugenics argument for trying to make a population shorter and shorter? Um, Actually, I want to circle back to that a little bit because recently Molyneux had like a little mini chapter on his Twitter where he was freaking out over eugenics. No, he actually made a video about it, which I love this. The fact that now that he's like written books and he did his podcast forever, now his videos are just like, man, I gotta do this argument on Twitter and I'm gonna talk about it now.
Well, his whole shtick was that he didn't like the state control aspect of it, but
See, but he defined it that way. He said that, oh, it has to have that, right? And I was like,
well,
no.
the issue is that that's usually the way that it's been conceived of in the past. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way. So.
Oh, he had a Richard Dawkins eugenics live stream? What? How did I miss this? What the hell? Oh, you know why? Because I went back to America.
Watch, it'll probably be dreadful, to be honest.
So this is crazy. He has and he did one with Sticks too, which I feel like I've heard everything they have to say about everything, which is why I don't really watch his videos anymore. I just kind of keep tabs on him because now he's just like an interesting character.
Yeah.
I do like the videos he does with his daughter. She's really cute.
Who, Molyneux? Oh.
Yeah, Isabel Molyneux. It'll be interesting to see like how she turns out as an adult.
Yeah. Hopefully she won't be an SJW. I find that unlikely, but yeah.
Well, she can draw too. She can draw and everything. And she's pretty entertaining to listen to with them together. They're very cute, very wholesome streams. Which is refreshing because so many people are creeped out by Molyneux. So I think that it kind of helps people like get that, like, yeah, he might be kind of like he's weird in some ways, but then he did a debate with Vaush, which I did listen to that was only 4 days ago. How was that only 4 days ago?
People said it was dreadful.
It was it was not a great debate. I mean, Molyneux kind of did his usual style of argumentation, which is where you take a person's actions, and then you use that to like derive a proposition to basically argue that like they don't really believe what they believe, which is a lot of what I do too, because it's a good approach. It's like it kind of cuts out a lot of bullshit because otherwise it's just this constant. Otherwise, there's just too much like sophistry involved, and you can't get to anything. And like one of the things Molyneux did really well is like Vaush will recontextualize and like make unnecessary reference to things as a way to like come off as like being more smart. And instead of just like simply stating what it is he wants to argue, he'll say, "Oh, this is an argument based in the Superman theory of whatever that dates back to blah blah blah," and it's just like fuck off. You don't know that that's the actual basis of this particular iteration of the argument. He's just stating that to like prop himself up, and I think that's how Vaush can like successfully trick people into thinking that his ideas have merit. It's kind of like it's a little bit like a Gish Gallop.
So he just talks a lot.
Kinda. Basically. He kind of talks a lot, but I mean, like Vaush. I feel like he can memorize things, right? And if you're really good at memorizing things, then it's pretty easy to kind of come off as very intelligent. But yeah. It wasn't. It didn't seem like a very constructive debate in general, but it was entertaining.
I remember that old conversation where he referred to Ryan Falk as a known lying Nazi, and that was
Wait, was that Vaush?
Yeah.
Yeah. Molyneux is
became
a
kind of
secret fan of him.
yeah.
I think that Molyneux should have a stream with him. That would be cool. But
Well,
Molyneux,
all
I think Molyneux won't because of the optics.
well, Falk clipped something from the beginning of like you can hear Molyneux's voice in the intros to some of his old videos.
Yeah,
Like, do you
yeah,
remember that? Like, do you know
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
talking?
He could have
Yeah.
about the yeah, and I totally buy into that theory that Molyneux was giving like a secret dog whistle. Like of all the dog whistles that are fake, that one was real.
Yeah. He
Especially because
started a
they're
new
saying the
channel
exact same
recently.
thing. They're saying here's an alternative to what is presented, and you're not even allowed to talk about it. And like that's what they're both saying. So they're both using that term alternative hypothesis in the exact same way to mean the exact same thing. I think it's too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. Um, Although in a lot of cases, so recently he made his new channel and he said that he was concerned about being big on YouTube one day, and I wasn't sure if he was trolling. It didn't sound as though he was trolling, but like it just doesn't seem feasible considering how censorship is getting on YouTube. So that was weird. And somebody else told me that he was on Facebook recently, like advocate advocating banning pornography or something. Like my friend Brandon Adamson is speculating that he's basically gone off the deep end. That is Ryan.
Yeah,
But
but Brandon Adamson, he's kind of weird. How much do we trust him based on his Twitter feed?
yeah, I think I might buy another hoodie at JCPenney, etc.
Yeah, right. Look, I
That's
made a plate of
based.
teas. I got them from Walmart.
Oh yeah, and tofu.
It might be my favorite Twitter. Besides God's Tiny Animals. God's Tiny Animals is the number one best Twitter account ever. Um, and
Did you
shitpost
read
pot.
Did you read Adamson's philosophical argument against facial hair? Like he
Oh yeah, I
wrote.
saw him. No, I didn't. Well, how much? How long was it? I remember he just noted what that it was. Oh, that something about like facial hair is dirty, and now we have to be clean because like it's a rejection of society or something. I forgot.
Well, kind of
But that was
what I
kind of it,
compare it
right?
to is like so the way I think about it is it's sort of, you know how people say that tattoos used to be edgy and then they didn't, they became fashionable, which just if there was ever anything interesting about it to begin with, it quickly lost all meaning because it was just appropriated by mindless normies, and now fucking everybody has a tattoo. And I think it's basically the same thing with facial hair. Like the way Brandon said it is that he said it's been ruined by trashy neo hipsters and what was the other phrase he used? Tech bro normies. So now he said that he's leaving facial hair behind and he's just going to be clean shaven all the time, which is what I'm doing as well.
See, I've always just preferred to be clean shaven because I don't like it when facial hair gets itchy, and then when it grows beyond that, it just feels like dirty and weird. I don't like it, and I don't like how it like adds volume to the bottom of my head because I think that I have a good head shape. So then, if I have a bunch of facial hair, it like fucks up the balance of it. And I don't like it. And honestly, I'm not sure I like facial hair on like anyone. I like mustaches because like you can do silly things with them, and I think it's funny when people have very distinct mustaches.
It only, in my opinion, it only really works, that is facial hair, if you have a highly masculine face. Like,
See, but
if
that's
you
the
have.
irony, though. The irony is that if you have a highly masculine face, your face probably looks fine without the facial hair, right? The whole idea is that you get a big beard to cover up your, your what is it? What is it that we call it if the incels have like the wrong skull shape with like there's like a name for it.
Um,
Like a name for a certain ratio or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like the
oh,
whole
mid face ratio, or
something like that. Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
it might just be that
basically,
people who have good heads, like they look good regardless. And then if you
yeah.
have like a beard, you're just like admitting that your head has like a funny shape. that you're
Yeah,
hiding.
like my facial structure's very bland. Like I have flat cheekbones, and I'm like my face is like a five, maybe 5.5. If I use something to cover up my raccoon eyes and the little weird skin issues that I have, the main thing that's stopping it from being a 6 is I have a huge forehead. Like my hairline is really high to the point where it actually might look like a receding hairline to some people, which is really not a good look at the age of 22. So that's kind of like, that's one reason to grow your hair long, I guess. Maybe subconsciously that's why I like to have my hair long, because it's overcompensating for my weird hairline.
Yeah, I actually thought a while about getting like laser removal of the facial hair just to save me all the time and hassle of having to shave because
It's not worth it.
not
Like
worth it because it's so expensive.
you have to do it like 10 times, and it's going to cost you thousands. And while it's healing, you're going to look like you have a disease of some kind because it leaves little scars all over your face, like before they've healed properly. Well, not scars, scabs. It'll look fine once they've healed, but until then, you'll look diseased. But the thing about it is, it's actually not as permanent as people say. Like, I think it's every 3 months, every 6 months, something like that. You've got to go back and get rid of new hair follicles. But yeah, I've considered it myself as well.
Yeah, so that's I guess I'll have to wait on the technology for that. I guess by the time that happens, I'll just be old and it won't be an issue. But
Yeah,
sometimes
it
I
would
just
be.
go into a trance and just start plucking hairs off my
You
face.
could you could pull off like the androgynous K-pop boy band look. Like you kind of have the right facial structure for it. I would look pretty strange, I think.
I don't know because I think your facial structure is a little bit like my facial. I think is a little bit more masculine than yours because I have like a more like you know how
Yeah,
my chin is like flatter. Like yours is a little bit more pointy.
yeah. Like I have a my jawline is quite curved. It sort of looks like a feminine jawline. Yeah, and I have a
You would
narrow.
like I might make a more convincing Asian, but you might make a more convincing girl. So I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, you're probably right actually, and Toto has said as much too. So
Yeah, I was actually also reading about when it comes to hair. My friends were like, "Oh, I only shampoo my hair like once a week or whatever," and I was like, "Oh, I've heard of this," and I never looked into it. And like, I just been mindlessly shampooing and conditioning every time I shower. And I read online, and like, did you know there are people who have a movement called no poo, where like they literally never shampoo their hair.
so do they just use water and I guess conditioner?
Yeah, I think
Or
they either use water, but I think even people even argue like they don't want to get their hair wet, which I
I mean,
think
I guess
that
it.
was so weird to me because like they style it, they just like don't want to get it wet, and they think that like the water is going to damage it. I think hot water is what's really damaging, and then shampoo is damaging. And then I read that like
Yeah,
conditioning too much or for too long is bad for your hair, make your hair fall out. And I was like, oh fuck me! Like I thought I was doing such a good job by just like leaving in conditioner for like whenever, forgetting about it, then rinsing it, then your hair feels so soft. And I'm like, yeah, this has got to be good for it, right? And I read online, they're like, no, you're supposed to not do that stuff. And I was like, damn. So I'm probably gonna go bald super early. It's not fair. But
yeah.
again,
Just using.
they'll have a solution for that that's even better by the time that's an issue. I think I'm really banking on the future a lot.
Well, the tragic thing about balding is that if it's, I bet if it's something that affected women more, science would probably have found a real solution for it by now.
Yeah,
Like
probably.
so many things. Yeah.
Maybe what we should
Two
do is we should just take men's issues,
uh,
right? And then we're
two
gonna
men by
find
the age of
women that are affected by it, and then we're gonna like put these women, give them a microphone, and like really try to like promote it as a women's issue secretly, because then men can just like quietly take whatever women's product it is that gets produced for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like with
Um
alimony and custody issues, all we need to do is just say, "Oh my God, look at Halle Berry having to pay this outrageous alimony. We definitely need to change all these laws, right?" And then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, let's change the laws." And then, I mean, it has to be sneaky, right? Because if they realize what we're up to, then they're gonna
Hmm.
Who am I kidding?
What
They'll just say
happens?
it's only for women. They'll just make it a deliberately, explicitly sexist
What
standard.
what happens in? I mean, it's probably a very it's a very marginal situation, but like child support, alimony, this kind of stuff, when both people are women, like lesbians, that would be interesting to read up on. And maybe you could use that to get more men's issues through. Although that I've tried before and it doesn't really seem to work.
Yeah, it's an argument people have made for a long time. Is like lesbians are falling through the cracks here, you know, with how things are set up. But I
Yeah,
mean, and then it goes back to the whole Belford Bax thing, where it's like, look at this guy saying literally everything we're saying, and it was 100 years ago, and nothing changed. And it's like, you know,
yep,
yeah.
it's quite. See, I like to avoid using all the cult language of the internet just because I think it's generally best to avoid that. But sometimes it's just convenient. I was going to say black pilled. It is very black pilling.
Oh, see, I love using that kind of language because then I signal to people and I can figure out if they have been following anything. Cause, I mean, but
In
also because that's just like I talk to more people on the internet than off the internet. So for me,
yeah,
it's natural to for my default to be to use these terms. And then if somebody asks me like, what does red pill mean? Like to me, that's like crazy because that's been like the last 5 to 6 years of my life. That's been like a central concept. So the idea that I meet somebody who like doesn't even know what that means, it is useful for me to have them express that because then I realize like I have to like play catch up with them. But I want them to let me know, right? If that makes sense.
yeah.
Or if I use
No,
the term
yeah, I know.
anti-feminist, people sometimes I'll meet someone who thinks that's really weird, and then I'll be like, "Whoa!" And then I'll remember like I'm not on the internet anymore.
Yeah, I I've considered doing that as well, like just throwing in something really subtle in conversation in real life to see if anyone picks up on it in either a good way or a bad way. Just using some internet lingo and see how it goes over. But I don't think most normies have any idea, really. Um,
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
crazy to me because I'm sitting here like, what do they think about or talk about? And then I feel like I can't talk to them about anything because it's like I think back
just,
through my
just,
last couple of days and I'm like, well, what did I do that I can talk about with
well,
them? I can't talk about, you know,
what
if
they
I
talk
listened to
about,
Church of Entropy stream, like what are they talking about that I could bring up in a normal conversation? Like people don't normally talk about that kind of stuff in reality, which is why their streams are so fun to listen to. And I
yeah,
hope that's something like these streams here too. Like we talk about shit that like most people either aren't interested in or don't know anything about or don't care about or whatever it might be.
but the stuff that normies talk about is just banality, reality TV shows, and etc. Like,
Oh my
yeah,
god! So that reminds me. So I'm gonna briefly tell my story of the last month. There's not a lot happened, so even though it's a month long, literally there's nothing to talk about. But basically, I was told by my job, "Oh, we're not going to come back after Chinese New Year. It's going to be a couple of weeks, and then we're going to see what's going to happen." And then they later on said, "Actually, we're not going to open until March." And I was like, well, shit, if we're not going to open till March, I guess I'm going to F off and go visit America, right? If I'm going to sit here and be unemployed for like 3 to 4 weeks, I might as well head over to America and then head back with a couple of days and then go back to work, right? So then I go over to America and I'm back in Minnesota and it's great. And then they say, okay, so it turns out if you left the country and come back, you're not going to be allowed to work for at least 2 weeks until after you've come back. And I was like, well, that's some bullshit. That's like a magic surprise, like changing the deal on me. But I get it. Like they didn't, you know, they're not personally out to fuck me over. They just have that thing. So in addition to waiting until March, I have to wait an additional 2 weeks until I'm allowed to work. And then when I do work, it's going to be part time, as in like they're going to try to schedule students like two at a time. And if they get enough students scheduled, then I get to work for 1 day and get paid like a part-time wage based on how many days they're able to schedule me. So basically, I'm guaranteed to make zero money. It's like a completely like awful situation. I'm essentially unemployed. Like I'm gonna go from 0% unemployed to 10%. But anyway, while I was in America though, I was there long enough to see the apocalypse, which is these Mike Bloomberg ad campaign where like literally I turned on the TV because it was fun to watch like Western TV again because normally I don't live with a TV, but I was at my parents' house. They have like a big TV. So I was like, okay, let's see what's on normal people television. Let's see what's happening, right? And oh my god, the Mike Bloomberg ads on like every channel, everywhere. You couldn't escape it. And then I go online and there's Mike Bloomberg ads like everywhere. I saw Brian Martinez had posted on Facebook like, look, there's a Pornhub ad with Mike Bloomberg. I hope that was satire, but I feel like it might not have been. And then I get in the car to go drive and meet my friends, and I'm listening to the radio, and there's more Mike Bloomberg ads, and I could not escape it. But also, my stepsister was there, and she likes to watch like really, really trashy TV, and that was pretty fun. Like we were watching, what was it? It was like Life After Lockup, and like 90 Day Fiance, and like super funny shit like that. Like they had like a bunch of couples, and the premise of the show is like they basically set up blind dates, and then these people get married. And then they have to like try to live out 90 days as married couples with people that are basically strangers. And like all the people on the show, like they act like they're taking marriage super seriously, but it's like the whole premise of the show is like an absolute bastardization of what marriage is supposed to be for entertainment. But they'll be like, "Oh, I'm really committed to this marriage," and blah blah blah, and it's like insane. And then I was watching The Bachelor, and God, that show is infuriating. Oh my God, the simp they have as The Bachelor on this show. Like one of the girls, like he'll be on a date with like one girl, and then one of the other girls will walk up to him and be like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I'm just looking out for you as a friend. And Tasha, I know that like she seems really nice right now, but I just want to let you know that I know her from before, and she's actually really toxic, and she's actually she tends to like destroy relationships." And he's like, "Oh my god, like what do you mean?" Like he's like a total woman, and like goes along with it, and like she doesn't even give any information or anything. And then he'll like confront her and be like, "So Sarah said that you're like really toxic and a total bitch and that you ruin relationships." And she's like, "What the fuck?" And he's like, "Hey, don't be defensive. I'm not attacking you here." And it's like, and then they'll say like, "I'm just trying to be vulnerable. I'm just trying to be vulnerable. Why aren't you trying to be vulnerable?" And it's like just the style of thinking and the way these people are is like they're like aliens. They're like fucking aliens to me. I don't know.
Well, it's
My
not
brain is
even
just scrambled eggs. Like this experience of watching American television is I wasn't ready
people
for it.
people would call it feminine, but it's difficult to even call it that. It just seems really strange and affected. Like for political reasons, it's like fashionable to be that way.
Yeah, but like it's yeah, and it's so weird. It's so and I'm sitting here like why can't people just like talk about eugenics and how Jews and lesbians are taking over the world like a normal person like that is like so much less like Gail Cord Schuler's channel talking about Jesuit semen bubbles and shit like that feels less weird to me than watching The Bachelor.
Yeah, we have something similar in Britain called Love Island. You might have heard of it.
Yeah, I
Well,
think yeah.
it's not that similar, I guess, but yeah, similar basic idea. I have only been able to watch small clips of it. Like I can't survive more than 2 minutes of it because it's just so painful how stupid it is.
Well, the other thing too, I was watching. There was an Onion parody, called like Sex House, right? And it's supposed to be like Big Brother, but they just make it all about sex. And I'm watching this parody, and I'm like, this isn't even as weird as as the real shows. Like this show is like more reasonable than ugh than the shit it's parodying. I'm looking at Brandon Adamson's Twitter, and he tweets, 24-hour Walmart closed at 1 a.m. now. End of an era.
Yeah, he's great.
That's good. That ties back into the whole 7-Eleven nationalism thing, because I guarantee that's part of it. Is they're like, nope.
He says some things as well where I don't really understand what they mean or what they're a reference to. Like earlier, he said Mars needs moms.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when you mentioned it. I was like, yeah, that one I literally don't get.
Yeah.
Well, one person liked it, so someone.
I want a burger.
I don't want to bird at
That's
that one. I get gave that one a like.
yeah. Yeah,
I was just gonna look into this thing about Wolverine being made gay,
that sounds interesting.
but only people are only posting videos, and I don't want to watch like a video. I want to.
So is there gonna be gay sex in it?
Well, I feel like they're cheating us if they don't. If you're gonna make a character gay, then you might as well just like do all the things that you might as well like wring as much value out of that as you possibly can. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's a kind of a cynical view. Actually, I prefer it when like characters are just like gay on the DL. You know, just
Well, if yeah, that's something I was just wondering about. So the overwhelming trend recently is to make like pop culture films, like superhero films, that they have this ironic humor, this people call it postmodern humor strewn all throughout it, where the characters will make all these self-referential quips and talk about how this is like this is the part where I kill all the bad guys, or and this kind of thing, or cue the music and then the music starts. And Deadpool really took that to an extreme. I don't know if you I didn't see it myself, but a lot of people said it about Deadpool. And it's like by throwing in all these inside jokes and these little self-referential quips, it's almost a way of the director giving the audience permission to enjoy it. It's like a way for the audience to feel that they're in on the joke, kind of. And I actually heard someone talking about this recently. He said he was in the film, in the theater watching a Marvel film, and there were all these people around him crying during one of the scenes. But then 5 minutes earlier, they're laughing along with the director about how fake it all is, but then they're so emotionally invested in it at the same time. And it's difficult to do a superhero movie with a really serious tone, though it has been tried. I guess it's what Christopher Nolan does, and Zack Snyder's Batman versus Superman thing, which was not popular, but so if they do this thing with Wolverine, it'll be interesting to see how seriously they play it, like how sincerely they play it, because that would be the worst if they just went for this grimly serious tone, with like a political signaling in it. That would be bad.
right.
So I guess they can't do anything that creative, really, because if they make a character gay, I think it's just this is the way it works with the dynamics. This is just kind of how it is. If they make a central character gay and make it really serious tonally, then it'll come across as lecturing, like a moral, this kind of moral nannying attitude that people don't like. So they can only really, otherwise it'll be pretty bland. Aside from the gay thing, is basically what I'm saying. It won't be tonally very different or interesting.
Yeah, well,
Sorry,
because like they have to justify the gayness, otherwise it's
yeah,
tokenism, right? But okay, so I tried to look into it, and there was a bunch of stuff from way earlier about how I guess there was a certain universe that suggested Wolverine may have been like bi, right?
yeah,
And
I've
it's a
heard that.
multiverse, which is that's one reason I'm like 1000% not really into comics, is like the whole concept of a multiverse just seems like a fucking cop out. Like the idea that you can just rehash it every time, and that like no characters have any essential qualities whatsoever because you can literally just change as much as you want all the time. Like that's kind of fun, but it makes me not really care about these characters. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah,
just arbitrary. They don't exist in like a consistent universe. But okay, so I found an article that's actually addressing the recent news on this. WeGotThisCovered.com, which I can't tell yet if this is satire or not. I feel like it's not. But it's a Wolverine is gay. Sorry, homophobes and bigots, but the adamantium-boned mutant with the killer claws has officially come out of the closet, and for my part, I can't help but applaud his bravery. While I don't see any reason why this should change his personality or future adventures in any way, as a committed Wolverine fan, it's at least a relief that his previous predilections for traumatized teenage girls have turned out to be totally innocent. And, in a heartwarming twist, it's looking like Wolvie and Cyclops might be finally confessing their feelings for each other. Adorable. Like, see, just the way this is written, it comes off as possible satire, but I think this person's just, like, literally actually excited about it. And let's see, if you're in doubt about Wolverine being gay, then check out X-Men #7, which confirms that he's not only gay now, but has been gay throughout his long superhero career. To summarize the background for this, the current X-Men comics arc sees Marvel's mutants declaring the island of Krakoa a sovereign nation-state. On this island, fans notice that the X-Men's home shows that Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean Grey's rooms apparently have connecting doors, and anyone that stayed in a hotel will know for sure that this definitely means they're all getting it on while nobody's looking. But the cherry on top of this delectable cake is a conversation between Cyclops and Wolverine where the pair discuss their Krakoan bliss. Scott mentions that it's nice to see Jean Grey hanging out in a bikini, then mentions that he himself likes hanging out in a Speedo. To this, Wolverine replies, well, who could say no to that? This, obviously, is an admission that from Wolvie that he's gay, and always has been. I think that's a stretch. I could totally see, like all kinds of men would joke, like, hey, that sounds good, right? Like, that doesn't, like, that could be, like, an ironic kind of joke about that. That's thin. This is so thin. So I guess Wolverine maybe is not gay.
Yeah, I've seen these fantasy stories where they try to basically reinvent the world into sometimes it's for political reasons or sometimes it's just to have fun with an idea, but it's always struck me as very strange and inauthentic, where they try to make homosexuality like the default or the most common sexuality is like the exception and the taboo thing, but it really just doesn't. It's not that I have any moral objection to it, it just doesn't work. Like the idea, even theoretically, it just makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's a little bit nonsensical, right? Because
Yeah,
the overwhelming majority have to be heterosexual for like things to continue, and that's like a defining aspect of the gay experience is the fact that it's not super common. So it kind of betrays the whole idea of like, oh, we're gonna have representation, but it's like you're creating gay representation in a world that like doesn't exist, that no one can relate to. And like what pisses me off is people will like look at shit like this and then they'll say, oh, the gays are ruining our comics, and it's like, I don't know, man. I guarantee you that a lot of these writers and people pushing this are straight people and fucking allies. You know, like I didn't ask for this, right? And I'm pretty vocally against this kind of like retarded shoehorned tokenism, right? But like that doesn't count for anything because people are just going to perceive, oh, the gays ruined our comics. The way they end this article too, it is confirming the suspicion, which is, here's hoping Wolverine Cyclops becomes as established as Lois and Clark. And honestly, if one of the biggest characters in superhero comics can come out as gay, then why not some of the other biggies? Batman? Superman? Heck, maybe even some of the more uptight readers might come to terms with some feelings they've been struggling to suppress all these years. So literally this writer is saying, why can't we just make everyone gay, and maybe that's going to make the reader gay too? Like they're just confirming all of the they're really, what's the word? Not confirming, but not justifying. What's the word I'm looking for? They're, I mean, yeah, kind of justifying all of these concerns people have that like, oh, they're going to turn all of our comics gay and try to turn everyone gay, and like that's supposed to be ridiculous, but this writer seems to think that's what that is. I don't know. What does the chat think? What do people think? Is this article satire? I can't tell. I legitimately can't tell. Has anybody heard of this? Has anybody heard of We Got This Covered? Is this a satire site?
it might be, I guess.
Most of their reactions are angry. They're mostly angry.
The thing is, you don't want to assume that some really strange take has to be satire, because that's the world we live in now, where people's real is more insane than satire pieces. Like, I remember someone said this a few years ago that The Onion should just become a straight news organization because they kind of could be almost at this point.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the Twitter
You
for
know,
this author, so let's see. London
there's
City
also
Mate.
like I was curious about your take on this. I don't really see why it matters, but I know this terminology from when I used to watch SJW videos, which I still do sometimes just out of curiosity. Um, and sometimes it is interesting. So there's this tension in like gay films, like films that deal with gay issues, or where like most of the characters, it follows like a group of gay men or gay women or etc. And a tension between what I believe is called the assimilationist mode of storytelling in LGBT representation, and then there's another. I forget what the other thing's called, like othering or otherizing, something like that. And the assimilationist one is where the gay people are represented as being literally the same as everybody else. Like, they don't really have any distinguishing features. That they don't have like a gay accent, or they basically are just like straight people except gay.
Yeah, and
And
I guess
then
that's more of like an anti-stereotype
yeah,
movement, right? They're trying to downplay any stereotypes.
so like a real world representation of what this kind of person is like. I'm not a fan of his, but he's a good sort of representative of this. Would be someone like, I guess, Dave Rubin. Very very assimilated, very ordinary. Yeah. And then there's the other kind, the otherizing mode, which emphasizes all of the differences that is between gay people and straight people. Like, do you have like a take on that?
Well,
Like,
that's
which do
the
you
thing.
think
So I
is?
remember that show Glee from like forever ago, the high school, and it's like a
Yes.
musical, and they're all like
Yeah.
singing or whatever. Everybody's like obsessed with like a cappella singing or whatever the fuck. It was like Pitch Perfect but bad. But like what really annoyed me about it, I think also in like other shows, I think in like I want to say Skins, and in like any of these like high school shows that have a gay character, they don't do the assimilationist approach, right? They do like the tokenism approach where they're very very exaggerated and they're very obviously gay. And I get
Right.
that like that's kind of the way gay people are, especially the kind of gay person that you know they're gay in high school, right? But like they always annoyed me because it just felt like they weren't real people. Like they were just walking three-dimensional stereotypes, and they were just there to exist and be like, see, look, we have a gay, and like they never had any like real interesting development or anything, right? But then so then I would kind of be more like emotionally inclined to accept the sort of like depiction of a normal character that just happens to be gay.
Well, the argument, see, it's interesting. The argument that they'll make is that that's homophobic because it's saying, it's implying that gay people should adhere to straight social norms or something approximately like that.
Right. And I guess part of it is I don't like this idea that art has to like preach like I'm okay with like packing morals and ideas into that. Like I think that all art should have something like that. But so much of it is literally just this idea that like media depictions of things like influence you on a subconscious level, which isn't it's not really that true, but it's sort of like this advertising and marketing kind of approach to it, as opposed to like creating a story that's like based on certain moral dilemmas and depicting them. You know what I mean? Like there's a distinction there, and I think that we really don't have like good strong moral stories. We just have like weird advertisements. And I guess I'm not exactly sure what the line is between that. Um, let's see. Like in theory says, but how are we supposed to know that he's gay otherwise? Well, we just have to know that he fucks men, right? He just has to have a boyfriend. And I guess that would be the example, right, of like the anti stereotypical kind of like here's the normal gay, right? Usually they'll depict that kind of gay as like closeted, right? Though, so he'll like be like beating up the gay kid, and then he'll always turn out to actually be gay, right? which is like an annoying, retarded
Right.
stereotype. But yeah, like I kind of like the idea of like a humorous thing where like a character's sexual interests aren't even part of the story. Really, it's not relevant. But then at the end, like they just kind of reveal like, oh no, they're gay. It turns out. I think that what I forgot what show it was I was watching where like they did
Well,
something like
that's
that, and it was kind of funny. It was like it was kind of a humorous little twist. I think it was like they made like a woman bisexual. I think it was like Enchanted or something. It was some. Oh, it was really stupid. It was a really stupid live action fantasy like PG-13 movie from like the early 2000s where like at the end the woman like kisses a girl and then the main male hero looks disappointed and then she goes I'm bisexual and then kisses him too. And it's like ha ha ha, right?
all.
Yeah, and it's just like stupid. Like
It's a bit cringe to say the least.
I guess the best way I can kind of clear all this up is like a good example of a story that that depicts homosexuality in like a story that makes sense and in a cool way was Brokeback Mountain. That's a good movie because the plot needed those characters to be gay men in order for the plot to make sense.
If
You
I
know?
remember correctly, wasn't the story with that like so I have very vague memories of Brokeback Mountain. I can't remember large chunks of the plot, but as I recall, it's like one of them was definitely gay, and it was obvious like pretty early on, and then with the other one, it was like kind of ambiguous, or he was more conflicted about it. Um, am I misremembering?
Well, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there was that conflict there.
Yeah,
But yeah, the overall plot was they were going to do this work on the mountain, and they were both like leaving their wives, and basically secretly cheating on them, and then eventually just using this as an excuse to continue their affair.
yeah.
Which actually, I remember I was still Christian when I watched that movie when it came out, and I didn't have sympathy for for the characters. Like when he gets like I think he gets like murdered. He like, goes to Mexico and gets murdered for being gay. Like that's how it ends. Right, and I was like, I don't feel bad for him because he's cheating on his wife and he was a bad
Well,
person,
like,
which is like
well, it
fair,
is.
kind
Well,
of.
it is. It is a depressing film. Like all of it is kind of depressing.
Yeah, yeah. But
But
like that's an example of like and like the that with that issue since we don't it's not in a setting where gayness is normalized. That's why these straight acting gay males in it like are very believable. So and
yeah,
like in theory asks, so am I correct in hearing you don't want any more gays in media? So here's the issue. Like I don't think that there should be just like one kind of media, right? I think just like how it kind of goes back to forced association. Everybody says when these SJWs and feminists complain about depictions of things in media, they're the ones who want to control all media to only depict certain things. And to some degree, the alt right is that way also. They also want to control all media and shut down anything that's not what they want, right? Like they were freaking out over that Netflix special with the gay Jesus, right? And my
oh yeah,
motto is more is more. I think we should have all of it, right? But that's where it comes into play that like SJWs, they're not making original things that appeal to their sensibilities. Oftentimes they're kind of corrupting and tinkering with stuff that's already established in order to trick people who like those things to going and accepting it because they're doing it from like a political perspective and not from a perspective of like a good moral story or even just like a logical thing. Like I think that's one issue too is that there's a certain utility in storytelling to having gay characters. For example, like you could create a gay love triangle that has far more drama in it because it could potentially go any direction in any way. Whereas if you make it a straight love triangle, you can't necessarily create there's less opportunity for creating that sort of like drama and tension,
yeah.
right? Because you have A, B, and C. In theory, in a gay love triangle, any two of them could hook up. Whereas in a straight love triangle, traditionally, you only have like two possible couples, unless you start making them bisexual or trans and
Um,
pansexual.
And something else that's interesting is that it's sort of seen as so having explicit sexuality and sex scenes in like now is seen as like sophisticated. I don't have any moral objection to it, but it is weird that it's viewed in that way. Like not having it is seen as unsophisticated in some way. I mean, it was pretty much the norm before the 20th century, and I guess in the early 20th century as well, that whole domain of human activity was pretty much just walled off from storytelling. And you had people like H.P. Lovecraft, where there was basically no romantic interactions of any sort between any of the characters. The characters were usually male, with one or two exceptions. Not that I think that's like a necessity or anything, but yeah, they were usually male and didn't really mention having wives or girlfriends or anything like that. And it was just about their own internal struggle with the weird experiences they've had, with aliens in the case of H.P. Lovecraft, or like weird, the supernatural and so on. And I guess platonic relationships between characters. And that's like an avenue that, it just seems to be kind of gone now. Like every show has to have loads of really explicit sex scenes and stuff in it. Otherwise, it's seen as what is it seen as? I don't know.
I guess it's like childish. It's not adult. It's not serious. It's not dramatic.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I think that the reason for that, I think it has to do with in America, right? We're like the stereotype is that in the UK they'll allow tits on television, but then they'll censor violence. They'll be really you'll have really cheesy violence and really explicit sex, whereas in America it's the reverse. We have really crazy violence, but then the sex has to all be covered up. And I think what ended up happening is that basically the Puritans were censoring sex on as many dimensions as they possibly could, but then it got to the point where we were looking at like classical art nudes, right? And then we're sitting there like, come on, like you're not going to censor that. This is like great art, right? So they're like, fine, we can't censor that. So that's where the line ended up getting drawn. And then I think what ended up happening is it created an association between like high art and nudity. And then this whole idea of the tasteful nude. And then and then eventually as cinema became a thing, like now it's like, oh, if we have nudity, that's just like having nudity in Renaissance art, right? Which, could be the case. Like some sex scenes do have like artistic merit to them. Some of them are freaking like weird. Like the weirdest sex scene ever, one of them is in 300. Yeah, he's like fucking the Oracle, or no, he's fucking that chick, and it's like blue, and they do that like weird slow motion thing, and it was like the most like weird and like least sexy and like stupid sort of a sex scene. It's like the top tier example of just like putting sex in there just because they wanted big titties on the screen, and then they like added all these visual effects over it to make it seem like artistic, which like basically 300 is like the worst movie of all time. Like that was one movie I saw exactly one times too many.
Yeah.
Oh, the other, my favorite sex scene though, it was the movie.
Go on.
I think it was the movie Choke, where the woman, she has like a sexual fetish for being raped, right? So she like puts out an ad and she's like, okay, you need to break in, and then the knife is going to be over there, and you need to do this. And so then like he agrees to it, and he's like trying to like fake rape her, but she keeps like telling him like, no, not like that, do it like this. So she's just like totally bossing him around the entire time. So that was like the funniest rape scene ever.
Yeah.
God, that scene is so funny. Like, and that isn't that so. It's like so accurate to like the state of men and women. like,
Yeah.
like literally women saying, "Please rape me," and then the whole time the man's like, I'm not really into this, but I guess I'll try." And then she's bossing him around the whole time, and then outside of all of this, the feminists are saying, "Oh my God, look at this! People think rape is funny." The entire depiction is like a female-dominated phenomenon.
Yeah. There's actually like a where which hasn't been censored, curiously, where women basically tell real lives who have like women who have basically like a rape fetish. Apparently, this is actually a thing. Will tell real life stories about stuff happening to them in that vein and how arousing they found it. It's really, really strange and surprising that it hasn't been censored.
Well, and I've heard
Like,
the argument too that some people argue that when it comes to like services for helping people who are who like have been raped, a lot of the men who go in to like volunteer and to help and be trained in those areas are male feminists who get off on hearing these things, which I don't know the degree to which that's prevalent, but if we're following the stereotype of male feminists, wouldn't be totally surprised by it. But if we're also following the stereotype of like feminists exaggerating everything, I wouldn't be surprised if it's exaggerated either.
well, the thing is that most men are like normie feminists, and most women, but they're not committed ideologues. I guess the difference. But yeah, a lot of them just seem to think that it's the way to um, the way to do right by women, I suppose, and that's how they become obsessed with it, even if they don't understand the ideology that deeply. You know?
Well, and the thing is if they were to crack down and ban on this sort of like rape story porn, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
First of all, I imagine that style of eroticism would appeal more to women, right? Because it wouldn't be as explicitly visual; it'd be more like storytelling, and women are the ones who like to buy all of the smut, all the romance novel shit.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, if you were to ban that, then I wonder if that would create like an influx of men who then want to like volunteer for these things where they get to hear the stories firsthand. But at the same time, I think that with porn in general, people watch stuff that's like crazier and more extreme and more out there than they'd ever actually do in reality. And like they'll have like they'll get off to like the idea of it, but I think if they were actually there in the moment, they'd be like, oh no, I don't actually want to do this. Like it's too much work. That's another thing too. People look at like porn, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is this weird thing these people are looking at. They must be a sick person." And it's like, well, I don't know. I just think there's like a huge, huge, huge gap between like watching something and finding it interesting versus like actually wanting to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I think that this Wolverine gay thing, it's like it's these stories about superheroes being corrupted is like this has been a constant trend for what, like 5 years now, longer.
There's. I just remembered that story about the Welsh guy who had a car accident and hit his head or something, and it turned him into a homosexual. And that would be an interesting premise for a story. Like that's actually a thing that happened, apparently. It's maybe would it be slightly politically incorrect? I don't know.
Wait. So you said he hit his head when?
So he had some kind of an accident, and hit his head. He was straight before the accident, and afterward he was attracted to men. This Welsh guy that, like, I think the BBC.
I think I did hear about that.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. It's in keeping with what happened to some other people who had that I used to read case studies about people who had head injuries and it changed their sexual behavior. Usually just something like it changed their libido, like increased their sex drive, but or they developed weird fetishes and stuff like that. But I hadn't heard of a case of somebody actually having like brain damage, like a head injury, and it changing their sexual orientation. But it doesn't seem crazy to me that there's at least one case of it actually happening.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, can you like reverse engineer like that sort of head trauma to figure out like what parts of the brains it affect and everything? I mean,
Presumably.
it seems quite
Um,
random. Like it's just you just don't know, which is kind of scary.
there are two brain areas that are implicated in sexual orientation. Nobody really understands why, though. It's purely correlational. They're parts of the brain that normally affect thermoregulation and stuff, like maintaining homeostasis and things like that. So nobody, like a priori, nobody would have guessed that they had anything to do with sexual interest. And this is specifically in men, I should mention. But yeah, gay men have structures in those areas that are unusual, that aren't like straight men or women,
Well,
that
and
are
I think part
different
of
from.
it too is you can measure it with like responses to like pheromones and things.
Yeah. But yeah, I was just thinking that would be an interesting. So, how they turn these real life accident stories into movies sometimes, that would be interesting, maybe. Although, like, maybe just a short film. How much could you really say about it?
Well, I mean, you could make it kind of like animatrix styles, where it's like episodic, and then each person they focus on has like a different thing. I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of stories that are extremely simple and short, but maybe you have like a lot of them in a series. I just like I've been replaying all the Final Fantasy games, and I'm sitting here like, man, I don't remember a lot of these final plots except vaguely because they just added so much unnecessary complication. And like for the most part, these stories start out really cool, but then they add on this extra magical layer to create like a dramatic twist, and it always feels so arbitrary. Which I guess you're too young, so you haven't played like the PlayStation Final Fantasies.
No.
Yeah, that's like my generation is what we all grew up on. So I have replayed Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 2, and now I'm going to try 15 to see if my new laptop can handle it. Because I tried it a year ago on this laptop, and it did. And apparently a lot of people have this problem with that game, so I might need to get a refund. But they were all on sale super cheap, and I figured if I have a bunch of these games that I can sink hours into, then I can forget about eating long enough to save money
Yeah.
and to not
Do you
have to
like
go outside.
do you like puzzle games at all?
I don't.
Like,
I mean, kinda, but it's hard to get into those. Like I like games
yeah.
where you have. I like RPG games because you get to like build a party and then like try different things and there's like visual elements of walking around and stuff.
Yeah, like I liked the Portal games, not so much for the puzzle element. Like I found the design aspect of it fascinating. Just the idea of um Derek, are you there?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Jay
No, yeah,
Willie.
Portal was
I'm
cool.
here.
I've seen like I had some friends who played it and I've seen some videos of it, so I get the concept of it. Like it's cool how they create things where it's like you fall through it and then it like the other end of it is like horizontal, but then you still have the momentum of gravity, just like stuff like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I like that too. I also like the. I don't know why, but Portal, I like the story and the theories that existed because it's so creepy and quite disturbing. But I like things like that, so that's good.
Yeah, like the idea that you're sealed into this huge underground facility that used to be like a mine or whatever, that's being maintained by robots. But it had the visual aesthetic. It was really like it would be interesting to see what it would look like if someone actually tried to build a place like that.
Well, the scariest thing I must say must be GLaDOS and the companion cube.
Yeah.
I know you're familiar, but I don't know if Derek is. Are you familiar too?
Familiar with what?
The scary theory about Portal.
The scary theory? All I know is the general thing. I know that there's like an AI that you're talking to the whole time, and it promises you cake, and it turns out there is no cake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like that's true. But
That was the
there's a
story,
lot
right?
of
That
more.
was the whole point.
So there's a lot of disturbing things about that AI that is like hidden in further along in the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't know the deep lore, but God, how
I
long ago was Portal? That was like what 2007 or something.
My
I
niece was born
preferred
that year.
I
Whereas look at
preferred
me
the
being like,
second
"Oh,
one.
this game is so old," and I'm like, "I just beat Final Fantasy 7." Like,
Yeah, I preferred the second Portal game personally, which came out in 2011. It
Like
was
I
like,
can't
yeah, go on.
play and buy new video games because because I'm gonna move out of my parents' house this weekend. So
do you need a roommate? Because I have to change my whole life. I have to quit my job and get rid of this apartment and throw all my things away, and then I can move wherever I want. I just have to find a place to live where I'm qualified to work, even though I only have a philosophy degree.
oof, that would be very hard because like I think it's kind of hard for you like for because the place I would live in that would be either France or South Africa, and I think that getting jobs in those countries as
No, I
a
don't want to go to either of those. That sounds
yeah
awful.
like
Why are you going to those
that no
places?
those countries are the best in my humble opinion. Those are the best countries that exist in the world,
Really?
even though shit. No, but to me, I have a huge
So
cultural bias. But to me, those places have the best circumstance that you can possibly be in as a human being to live in those either one of those countries. In my humble opinion, those
Well,
are the
assuming
best.
you don't get like necklaced.
What?
so
Assuming you don't get like murdered, right? Because that's the stereotype, right, of South Africa is like you're gonna get murdered.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing about South Africa is not I like it. It's kind of a misdemeanor. It's true, but when a misdemeanor is that there is very hard to like wrap one's mind around what actually is South Africa because there's so much regional diversity. Like you remember this to say that California and Texas and Alaska and Hawaii and Illinois are like the same in the same country as Florida. They're very different regions, and I think South Africa had the same thing, but perhaps even bigger difference. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe. I guess I'm being kind of a hypocrite because everybody's giving me the same shit over. Like, are you sure you want to go back to Hong Kong and not just like fuck off
well,
and stay in
Derek, if
America?
just curious, have you thought about going to Southeast Asia like Thailand or maybe Europe, like a non, I guess maybe Eastern Europe or Russia? That would be interesting.
Yeah, I'd probably not try Russia,
Oh,
but maybe
yeah, sorry,
something
of course.
like Ukraine or Poland or I don't know, something kind
Czechia.
of more, yeah, more in the eastern part of it. But I don't know,
Yeah,
like, because I don't have any tolerance for American socialism, and I feel like every single country in Europe is worse.
the Czech
No,
Republic
actually,
would be.
most countries in Europe are actually more capitalistic than the United States. This might be a
Yeah, I've
shocker to
heard this,
some
like,
people.
Scandinavian socialism isn't a real thing and stuff. I don't
No, no,
know. Is
that's
that
the
really
biggest
true?
lie ever. Like the Scandinavian countries have far more market freedom than the United States.
Hmm.
Did you know that?
Yeah, yeah. No, I know that some of the argument. I still they still have like ludicrous like sales tax and everything, don't they? Or maybe not.
Well,
Maybe if you
they
add
do
up.
have a ludicrous taxes, but the market is far less regulated than market in America, so it's easier to find job, and it's you have far more freedom as a entrepreneur in those countries.
Well, to Derek, any regulation is socialism, so it's
Yeah,
kind of like.
I'm. But no, but that's a good point though. I mean obviously I can't keep to my standard because it means there's literally nowhere I can live if I don't
By
just
the way,
like bite the bullet.
I'm sorry. I don't know why. I just suggested that you go to Russia. That was really stupid.
Well,
Sorry.
actually, I would not say Russia is not as bad of a choice as people might think, and what I mean by that is that for me,
Depends which part.
if I wanted to be gay, if I'm gay and I want to have literally reproduce within Russia as a single guy and then have kids and have full legal rights to my children. So if you're gay, you have actually more legal rights and opportunities to have your own children in Russia as you have in most Western European countries, if not all of them.
That's pretty
I've heard that.
interesting.
I've heard
Yeah,
that
very.
I've heard that in the really urban areas, like being gay isn't a huge deal at all. Like in Moscow, for instance, it's apparently like it's not nearly as.
Yeah,
No, I
just like
haven't
don't be
been.
super gay about it, right? Just
which we don't
Yeah.
like anyway. And also like we should also like remember that if we look at Russia, well, we can have kids, but we can't get married. Whereas if you go to France or Germany, you can get married, but you cannot have kids. So that's like why marriage, like state marriage, it's like a point. It's not the best idea anyway. And if you want to be married without kids, then that's all defeats the purpose of marriage. So Russia is actually more, when it comes to opportunities as family planning, is actually better than most Western countries.
Yeah.
Which is
So,
very
okay,
interesting.
Paulo in the chat said Estonia and Georgia, the country, are very high in economic freedom. Now, so I don't know. The only thing I know about European countries is based on their Eurovision entries. And Georgia tends to be really, really good. And Estonia tends to be really, really bad. But they each have like one notable exception. So based on that, I would go with Georgia. But I remember when I was in high school and I learned that Georgia was a country, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I learned like, oh, it's actually like war torn. But that was like 20 years ago or whatever. No, not quite 20 years ago. It
I
was
don't know why
like
it
10 years
is.
ago.
It is because the Ossetia and Abkhazia, which is two different regions with different ethnic groups in it, right? They were left within the country of Georgia when, I think it was when Georgia was getting out of the Soviet Union, right? And so they said they basically wanted to have their own countries, right? Because, like, why not, right? And then Georgia was like, no, and then they're like, hey, fuck this. And then they had war on Georgia and they won the independence. But then most countries doesn't recognize those as independent countries. But Russia do, so I can give the Russians at least something for that.
Something interesting about Georgia, it's in the Caucasus area, which is like, so lions used to have a much larger range than they have today, where you just find them in Africa. They used to exist like all over Asia and Europe. And the Caucasus region was the last part of Europe where you could find lions before they eventually became extinct in that region as well, about 1000 AD.
Oh, did people
That
like?
makes
Was it
sense.
because the Asians were eating them because they're just cats but bigger?
Well, I think that if it was in Caucasus, then I think that the people who live there were probably more like us, just giving the name Caucasus. It's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah, like they're not like East Asians or
No,
Arabs.
Caucasus is where the term Caucasian comes from.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. We should make the Caucasus that should be the white Israel. Right? Nothing could I
Well,
could not
technically-
conceive of that going wrong.
You know-
Let's just make that white
You know,
Israel.
some of the Nazis apparently tried to make the argument that the Aryan race originated from Thailand. Don't understand where they got this idea, but
I
that
think
was
I know
thing.
where they got the idea.
No, I think that was part
If
of
you
they
want
were
me to
trying to
explain.
hijack Hinduism, right? I think that was part of it. Like a lot of Nazis, they like tried to like literally that. They just tried to steal Hinduism. They're like, no, this is mine now. It was actually about us.
No, I know why that though. If you want me to explain it,
Okay, if you
Yes.
actually know why, yeah.
yeah, I think it's because if you look at Caucasus, right, the way the Indo-Europeans came from, right, and a lot of people, North Indians, right, they are Indo-Europeans just like the Europeans are, right. So what happened is that if you look at the old paganistic religions of Europe, right, which existed in all Indo-Europeans, right, it's just that all of them converted to either Christianity or Islam, but the only surviving branches of those Indo-European paganism would be Hinduism, and that's one of the things, right? And so it's interesting. Buddha and those people, right? Those like there were different branches of Indo-Europeans, right? One were called the Europeans, and the other one were called the Aryans is a surviving branch of those people mixed with Dravidians, right? And those are the ones that are predominantly Hindu, right? So, and also this is very interesting. Some people at the time in Germany, they speculated that the Germanic people were descendants of Aryans. Okay, so And that came from the idea of the counter-enlightenment thinker called Gustave de Gobineau. He basically had the idea that the Aryan race are supreme because Persia is the perfect society. And he was part of the counter-enlightenment. The counter-enlightenment is the predecessors of fascism, where fascist ideology come from. And Hitler took a lot of things from the fascist ideology, right? So the things about, including the Aryan master race from Gustave de Gobineau, and just because, like Christianity was a Semitic Jewish religion originally, whereas Hinduism was the original, it's the religion of the Aryans. Then it kind of makes sense why Hitler who wanted to pretend the Germanic people to be the Aryan descendants, which is false, but they believe that. Because the Aryans came from the Indo-Europeans like the Europeans. They're cousins, but the Europeans did not came from the Aryans. You're wrong on that, but you kind of get why he would want to take Hinduism. You know what I'm saying? I hope I made a lot of sense there.
I think I followed that. There was a lot of information, though.
No,
so you're saying there's not nothing to it, but...
Well, it's why, like, yeah, Indians are technically Caucasoids. Most of them don't look European, apart from Bollywood actors. Like, there are some Bollywood actors who could just about pass as Italian or something like that because they're so pale. But they have Indian names and so on. Whereas, like, for the average person in India looks pretty much nothing like that.
Oh, hey, we have Jen in the chat saying the original Aryans came from India. Actually, she knows some stuff about this.
I do too.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna Jen, I'm gonna toss you a link just in case you feel like hopping on. I think this is usually a bad time for you, but
I would say that the ultimate, like, when you know there are different theories about something, right? It's kind of hard to like say, oh, this is the definite objective truth. What happened 5,000 years ago, undoubtedly. Like, there are a lot of usually very different competing theories. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And actually, the term area is similar to Aryan, but if you look at the linguistic evidence of the Indo-Aryans, it's a lot of Aryans live there, right? It's lived in first Indo-Europeans left the Caucasus into Western Asia, right? And there is when the Aryan people began to like take their root, began, right? But then they split up into two different branches: the Iranian branch, which is the ancestors of the modern day Kurds, Persians, and similar people, and a lot of those people went to the India and they mixed with the Dravidians, thus becoming the Indo-Aryans. But they are genetically more Dravidian than they are Aryan. So they are 20%, on average, 25, 30, up to 40, 50% Aryan, and the rest Dravidian. But we also need to remember is that Dravidians originally were far more similar to in the Middle East. And that's the reason. And Middle East people and European people look very much alike. And yeah, there's the Indians. So the Iranian languages and peoples and the Indo-Aryan people, they have a shared heritage between the original Aryans and a lot of the Aryans. But because a lot of the Indo-Aryans' DNA were from the Dravidians who lived there before the Aryans, those people are still native to that region. But the Aryan component was not. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, what's up, Spaceman? Thanks for sending me the link.
Hey, good to chat with you again. It feels so weird being like back on the internet, but I don't even have an excuse. I've just been like moping around because I'm sad about my job not reopening. And I'm sad about having to like job hunt and potentially move, which is like really stressful. So I have to figure out what to do. I have to turn this into. I'm looking at it in the wrong lens though. I've moped around for like 4 or 5 weeks now, so now I think it's time to be productive.
I will let you know if I need a roommate though.
If anybody has any ideas, because I'm a fucking NEET now, and. I guess I don't really have many marketable skills. No, I do. I totally do have skills. But I don't know.
Well, you did teach the Hong Kongers how to into English, right?
Right. I have an ESL certificate, and I have a good one. I have like the triple certification for teaching ESL, and I have experience doing that. So any ESL job anywhere, I should be able to get. I should be like among the most qualified people imaginable for those kinds of jobs. But they're kind of dead end jobs, and a lot of employers they look at that and they're like, oh, that's kind of a joke. Like you are a native English speaker and you just teach English, like you don't know anything, which is like fair enough, but the pay is really good. It's really good pay for very little requirement in terms of qualification, and often it's a very fun job. Because like I get along with kids. Like I think they're fun to hang out with. They're fun to talk to and stuff. Other people, like if you don't like kids, if you think that they're annoying or like tiresome or whatever, then like obviously the job is really really stressful and you hate it. I could flip burgers. I mean, like I don't think that's like beneath me. Like I think that's like I like and appreciate retail and fast food, but I don't know. Like I have a college degree, so I feel like I should probably aim for something that pays better.
Like for me, I'm basically just going to start to work at a restaurant. When I am out of school next week, believe it or not.
I'm actually
I know why I need to go back
I'm
to
considering
school.
applying for the scholarship to get a free master's in Wuhan University. It just feels like destiny. It just feels like
Seriously, like, you're
I
not
want
making
that
this
to be
shit
the
up?
story of my life because it was 2020 and the coronavirus completely ruined my life. So I decided to go to Wuhan University to get a free master's, and then I ended up in a fucking Chinese death camp. The end. I don't know. It's not the worst story, right? I could do worse.
No, I think it could be worse stories.
I could do worse.
But do you guys want to know why I need to go back to school again?
Well, why is that? Let's see. You're like 10 years old. So is this high school? Is this?
No, it's like college. But it's like I need to get an English degree because I did not get one in high school. So I need to get like an English degree in college so that I can apply for college, because they don't care if your English is perfect. You need to have the paper that you have graduated, have that English degree from high school, and I don't have that. I do have it for all the years in high school except the last one. So that means I just need to have that paperwork. My language skills, how I write and how I speak doesn't matter. Just the paperwork.
So they won't accept like those Cambridge tests that you can take. Like there's I don't remember how they're called. They don't accept them.
I did that, but I didn't succeed in doing it because it was too hard, and I got super hungry because we had to do it like in several hours in a row, and I couldn't eat in the meantime. So I basically became too hungry to be able to focus all that long. Because when I'm hungry, I can't think properly.
Well, that's a shitty way to conduct a test, man.
I know, right? Like, oh, well, you need to be here, and you cannot eat in 5 hours, and you need to also be here at 7 in the morning. So you need to have a big ass breakfast beforehand. So because a lot of people might feel sick in the morning, which most people do, I believe. No, but you need to eat, and then you need to write a test for 5 hours, and then stay here. You cannot like bring any lotion or any food or anything. You cannot have anything with you, not even a phone. You need to be in 5 hours taking a test, and all thing you can do is go to the toilet. So if you get hungry in that case, you can either give up or be hungry and finish the test.
Yeah,
very true.
Okay, but what you could do, this is the part of studying and preparing for a test that they're not telling you. You need to start intermittent fasting, because that way it'll be normal to just go that long. Like right now, I have successfully conditioned myself to eat one meal a day, because all I do is sit around naked and shitpost on my main on Facebook and play old Final Fantasy games. And since I only have one converter for my laptop's chargers, I have to, like, every couple of hours, I have to switch which one is plugged in. And every single time, I almost accidentally electrocute myself because I keep the lights out.
No, but you
could use my method when I had to do a test that was 3 hours long, and I was only allowed to have something to drink. I just brought beer, like that's nutrient.
true, but like,
Yeah, man, but I'm pretty sure you can retake those tests on different conditions. Like you go to Europe sometimes.
it was in
I'm
Europe.
pretty
I
sure.
did that.
Oh, they were so cruel in Europe.
Yeah.
Damn.
I guess my more
Fucking
obvious
asshole.
option is I could just quit the job I have now and see if any other schools are hiring. Because I imagine a lot of people have like fled Hong Kong and there might be openings, but like people just they don't want to go outside and they don't want to like go to places where lots of people are, and they especially are going to be like really concerned about like their children being exposed to the virus. So I think that it's mostly going to be just like via Skype. And I don't know how
Yeah,
I
but what
feel
about
that, about just
online
via
teaching
Skype.
shit, man? Like, I don't know. Can you teach online?
Well, here's the
Are there
thing.
like
I
services?
can, but there's a part of the contract I signed that says that if I like teach outside of the school, and like especially if it's somebody who is or like was enrolled in that school, it's like a non-compete thing, and they can like demand like a ludicrous amount of money from me or whatever. I don't know if this is even like enforceable. It seems like a ridiculous contract, and it seems like under the circumstances, the idea that they'd enforce it is like insane and like won't be a thing. But like that's
I
part of
think
it, right? That's why like I couldn't do that under normal circumstances because it's like too risky.
like,
So
think
you're
they
employed on
So yeah,
leave,
it's
and
like
you
I'm
can
employed on no paid leave basically
only
indefinitely.
you want to get out of work.
And not allowed to work. Yeah, exactly. So it's like a stupid situation, which like, it can't be. it just can't be legally enforceable. I think they just write the contract to be such a way to cover their own ass, right? But yeah, the way
I
the
think it's
company's
legally.
handling this situation just does not inspire confidence. Because I feel like that would be the first thing you address is you say, look, this is what we're going to offer. We understand that this is unexpected. We understand that you have bills to pay, and therefore, like, we're not gonna blame you or hold it against you if you need to, end the contract now. No strings attached, and go find other work, right? Like that should be totally reasonable. And like they could be doing more to facilitate teaching online. They talked about doing that, then just like gave up. So yeah, I mean,
No, but the thing I wanted to say is that they probably can't enforce it legally, but if you break it, they can easily fire you.
well, right. But I mean, if I'm breaking the contract, that's basically quitting anyway. So
Yeah.
well,
Did they
I
give you
guess
like
not.
a?
I think that technically, if I get jobs teaching online through Skype, I can get a little bit of money that way, and then I can still get a little bit of part-time work through my current job, and then I can just survive on little fried chicken snacks from the Circle K across the street. And the best part is I don't even need to wear clothes, right? I can just be naked, which means I don't have to pay for laundry anymore. So I can save a lot of money doing stuff like that. Although now it's getting hot here, so I have to turn on my goddamn air conditioner. I'm so pissed.
Wait,
I left for like the 2 weeks that has the best weather here in Hong Kong, where it's like just a little bit chilly, just tiny bit, and it's so nice outside, and the air is nice and crisp and fresh, and you can walk around. And then I come back, and I'm like, oh, now it's like hot again. It's like, and it's just gonna get worse now. So I get to just sit here through like the worst part of the year.
So
But
technically, ideally, you want to teach children over the internet while being naked. That sounds wrong.
Well, okay, no, because I don't. Oh shit! I guess
Well,
if you teach, you have to like use your camera. Okay, so I'd have to use my clothes, like for work, professional. It's kind of funny. It's like the opposite of a cam whore, right? Cam whores, get naked for the camera. I'd be like an inverse cam whore. I have to be all dressed and dignified while I'm on the camera, and then as soon as I'm done, I get to just not.
Sorry, I understand your situation is not that funny, but that's just like brilliant
it is
observation.
pretty
You would be the
funny.
reverse cam whore.
Yeah, I'm a reverse
Beautiful.
I'm an inverted cam whore, I guess. Well, that's the thing, though. Okay, like, if you're in my situation where, like, you need to spend as little money as possible and are encouraged to stay inside as much as possible, like, would you put on clothes if you just are intending on staying inside the same room for 24 hours? Like, why would you put on clothes?
Because it's cold where I live right now.
Oh, well, no, it's hot here. It's hot here. So,
Well,
I
must
can
be nice.
turn on my AC to make it cold, but why not just not wear clothes and not need the AC, right?
Yeah, but on the non-funny side, like what's the situation with your employer? Like they say we can't let you work for an indefinite amount of time, but we want to keep you in the contract.
I don't even think they're thinking of that. I think they're just kind of making shit up as they go along because they weren't anticipating it. But I guess I can't really. I'm not allowed to disclose like the actual verbiage of the contract or anything. But that's kind of the general gist of it.
But your stay in Hong Kong is to have this job, or are you able to stay there if you quit?
Oh, that's a good point. It probably affects the whole work visa thing. Well, and then what I'm more concerned about is I have a 2-year lease on this apartment that I have like 6 more months of. And I think after the first year, I'm allowed to terminate it early with like 1 month notice or whatever. But then what happens if within a month everything goes back to normal and then I could have my job back and now I'm out in an apartment, right? So like it's like shitty because like the ideal time to pack up my shit and quit everything and leave was like a month ago. Whereas the ideal like I might be like halfway through waiting out everything being shitty and then things can go back to normal in theory. But there's no way of knowing. So I've just been like sitting in my room naked, day drinking, and playing Final Fantasy IX, and it's like, what's the point?
Well, if worst really comes to worst, couldn't you just go back to the US and then find something else to do?
Yeah, but I can't. I don't want to work in the US. Every job I've had in the US has been depressing. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Well, I've only had one job, so I'm not complaining.
I used to work doing disability claims. That actually might be kind of fun again.
Like, I'm so weird. Like, when I'm thinking of work, I just want to do work so that I can pay the things I need to pay and save a lot of save some money so that I can afford to have my own family eventually.
See, and that's the thing is I've been doing so good, saving up money and everything here, and like really enjoying living here and really enjoying the job, and it's been like too good to be true. And I think that that's part of it. Is I can't. It's taken me a lot of days to come to terms with this reality that like I have to adapt. Which I guess in the broader scheme of things, like this is what happens when people like lose jobs or whatever, and I shouldn't be such a drama queen over it. But I also feel confident in my ability to just like subsist on water in Final Fantasy games.
Well, that's lovely because I wish I didn't have to eat so much. I need to eat 3 times a day, or else I starve.
I have some little oranges. I have little clementines to get some vitamin C, and I have a whole zucchini that I bought like 2 days ago. So that's now or never food. I have to eat that entire zucchini today.
Well, lucky me, I don't have to cook my food because I live with my parents, at least this week. But then when I move, the place I will move actually give us food.
Nice. You get to be a permanent adolescent then. They have surrogate parents there for you.
Yeah, it's perfect, and therefore I don't have to be I don't have to be to like have all the negative stuff with an adult, but still all the good sides. Well, technically I will still go to school, so I guess not all the good sides. But technically I like school. I really do. I think the schools are super funny to go to.
Anyway, so Jen, I guess I kind of bait and switched you because we were talking about like the history of Aryan people and its relation to Indians, but we also got sidetracked because the point of this stream in general, it's the QuarantStream because I'm technically under self-quarantine because I left Hong Kong for a little bit and then came back before I learned the rule that apparently I have to self-quarantine now for 2 weeks, even though the place I visited was not even mainland China, it was America. Yeah, I don't know. But that's why these are the QuarantStreams. I was going to call them QuarantStreams, but then I realized that that's Quran then, so people think it's a Quran stream, so I had to add the T.
No, it's not nice. Quran. It's Quran!
Quran?
Now, have you seen Site 10?
No. Oh, wait. You mean like the YouTuber site, like SYETEN, Site 10? That guy?
Yes, Site 10. Like the jokes he makes whenever he is speak about the Quran, all the characters pronounce it the Quran. Like they always pronounce everything like completely over the top, which is so funny.
Yeah, he made a lot of really funny videos. I remember though, like one of the last things he did was he like made something making fun of Devin Tracy over like some super old drama, and then Devin Tracy made fun of him for it, and then he just disappeared. Like that was the last that ever happened.
Very new videos.
That was the end of an
one
era.
time he made a video about he made a video series called Truck of Peace, and then speak about age of consent, and then they have Milo Yiannopoulos getting a blowjob. They say like, "Oh my god, you're getting a blowjob from a little kid," and then it's not a little kid; it's just a very, very short person, and it's supposed to be Devon Tracy, and it's have his music, and it looks exactly like you. That was super funny. He was literally sucking Milo's dick. Oh, I love that.
Whatever.
But Devon Tracy is that even though I don't agree with him like a lot of political things he say, but the video he does about race, I kind of love it. It's pretty good.
There were a lot of really funny ones. I loved the Truck of Peace series. Driving down the road in the Truck of Peace. That's a catchy song.
The best thing about all the people he makes parodies of is that they are like that, that in the real world. Like, it's barely even satire, because they are that crazy for real.
On a completely different note, today I learned that the Spanish term ole comes from Allah.
Does it really?
Apparently, there's etymological proof that it might. Like, of course, you can't really tell, but Spain was ruled by the Moors for a long time, so it's not too. It actually sounds kind of probable that Allah became Ole. I just wonder if it's like Ole Hu Akbar, or is it Hu Akbar? I don't know. Still, pretty curious.
If the word gets isolated from its original context, then it can develop in a way that makes it no longer fitting in the original context. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. It's just apparently there's some evidence to show that it comes from Allah, Ole. Yeah, it's funny. I guess to me at least. I'm easily entertained.
Some people who speak Arabic can even understand a bit of Spanish because of so many loan words in it. Like a lot of languages, there's so many loan words from different languages, so that you can even understand. Pretty much like if you speak English, and then you hear someone speaking French or Afrikaans or Bemba or Hebrew, you will understand a lot of the things they're saying because of the English, because they have so many words in common. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that is true. I mean,
and the same thing goes with Spanish and Arabic, which is kind of interesting, depending on what variant of Arabic, of course. But if you speak Andalusian Spanish and someone speaks Moroccan Arabic, that's the one dialects understand each other the best. Even though I don't think they're intelligible, but they do understand some of it because in that way. Because sometimes when I speak, say Afrikaans sentences to my mother, she understands what I'm saying because she's Swedish speaker. So that's like.
Yeah, and also they don't try to hide it. Like when you look at Yiddish, these days to greet each other they just say shalom, when like 70 years ago and then they kind of wanted to distance themselves from the Arabs, so shalom alaikum, salam alaikum. Yeah, it's too close, man. Let's just say shalom, man. That's cool.
Shalom, shalom. I'm in for a loan.
Jen, I'm interested in hearing what you've been up to, because I think I checked your channel like sometime last week, and I saw that you guys hadn't streamed for a while.
I had to do week in review on Duva's channel, not because I got a strike because I uploaded a video that had some like Nazi song in it that apparently triggered the YouTube algorithm because I was clipping. I don't know if you know who OV is. He's like an idiot that I like to make fun of.
Yeah, I've heard him come. Wait, did he come on when I was on there, or was that? It wasn't OV. What was that other guy's name? The one who said that he's a Nazi now because I made him upset.
Oh my
that was,
god, I'm
what's
trying
his
to remember
name?
who that was. I remember you triggered someone. Who was that?
It was like his name. What was his name? Like Contra, not Contra, like something. His name was like, what is his name? That's what's driving me insane. But I think it was not OV. I think it was someone else.
Maybe it was ConOps.
Yeah, it was ConOps. That was it.
Yeah, he's pretty much universally hated. He's like a smug, condescending liberal.
Yeah, well, now he's, I guess, a smug, condescending Nazi. It was kind of funny.
Oh yeah, that's right. You
I
converted
him. Yeah, well, and that's apparently a thing in libertarianism. Is we're all turning into Nazis, which
I think the reason why people say that is because of a lot of people might be anarcho-fascists.
yeah, something like anarcho-fascism. Just I love how people are just making up wild, new crazy things.
No, it
keeps things interesting.
it makes sense. Have you seen the video about it?
How does anarcho-fascism make sense? Please explain.
I think I can guess how it works.
It's
like
you have an
minimal government.
anarcho-capitalist situation, but the people living in a certain area, they just have a culture and they enforce it through ostracization to such an extreme degree that certain like cultural and religious aspects become the norm.
There's
Yeah,
going to be
that's like
some type of like dictator that arises, whether or not it's explicitly said, because people are tribal. So they'll like, not tribal necessarily in a racial sense, but tribal in a sense that like humans around like some de facto leader, even if the leader's never acknowledged by the government.
Yeah, and I guess it's a fine line because the moment they invoke any kind of violence or even just a threat of it, then that satisfies my definition for a government, and therefore it becomes no longer anarcho. So it could just be that if you're anarcho-fascist, that is going to be very transient in a way that a more libertarian anarchism probably would not be.
So that can only work on a very small scale, then. Like
what ideologies?
Yeah, well, a small scale is always going to be easier to pull off, right? You could, in theory, create any kind of arrangement if you have like a group of people that are all, like if you have like a group of adults all consensually agreeing to an arrangement that they're all able to leave physically if they don't want to be part of anymore, you can create virtually anything, which is just how cults work. Which I think
so.
Is
it's
fine.
a non-expansive, fascistic, small community in a system where there's no system above the small communities.
Aryan theocracies work. Like there wasn't a whole lot of top down. Individual tribes were able to do pretty much whatever they wanted. I know there was some talk about Aryan Kangs earlier on the stream, and supposedly Aryas didn't come from India. Very triggered.
Well, I do believe that the Aryan people.
Yeah, who told you that?
Like research it is that.
No, you didn't research it. You read propaganda from communists.
No, but the Indo-Aryans.
No, they don't.
Like,
no, they don't. They come from India. I can prove it.
Well, some of their genetic basis is.
No, it's from India.
From India.
Plus, Arya isn't even a genetic thing; it's a class thing.
Yeah, I
would much prefer if it was like a longer statement from both of you following each other instead of short statements.
Yeah, because I think this is an issue. Because I know, Jen, I think you get a lot of shit from people for holding this line, and it's something I know essentially zero about. So I've heard a little bit of each side of it. So,
well, do you know what divide and conquer is?
Well, yeah, the idea that you divide things up and conquer pieces of things, right? Because that's easier than taking on the whole. You dismantle all the synergy. Yeah.
If you divide people against each other, they can attack each other, and then you don't have to be attacked. It's like a strategy to stay out of war and conflict. So the Aryan invasion theory is basically divide and conquer on Indo-Aryan people by trying to put forward the false hypothesis that light skin is somehow connected to the quality of being Arya through intentionally mistranslating the Veda, which is just this weird belief that's persisted for hundreds of years, even though it's been basically opposed by all legitimate scholars out there. There's just not that many legitimate scholars in institutional scholastics.
Oh, but that's not the theory I'm like following. The theory I'm following is that is that there are a small genetic base, like that are about 25% of these ethnicities that came from the Indo-Iranians. They're also called Aryans.
Right. Again, so they're not
and
from Iran. They're from India. The Indo-Iranians thing and the Aryas come from Iran. That's another lie. Iran right now, it's a caliphate. So if it's caliphate, how come they're not running it by an Aryan theocracy? If they're the original Aryans, shouldn't they be closest to the old theocracy like the Indians are?
No, I'm not. I need to go to the toilet so I can be more clear, but I can explain it when I come back. Is that okay?
Sounds fine to me.
Wait. So it sounds like the point of departure here has to do with the Aryans being seen as either a class or a racial group. And Jen, your argument is that there was actually a class.
Well, the problem is it came from one racial group, but they did not every member of that racial group was considered an Arya, because only the ruling class would be considered Aryas.
Though I would contest that the current country named Iran does reflect on their genetic heritage, because going by that logic, my country would have to be very tribes that are fighting each other over some petty disputes and not have been influenced by the Romans.
Isn't that what it is?
No, currently we live in a very Switzerland is actually quite at peace with each other.
What to do with what I said, though?
Well, wait a minute. How long ago are we talking, though, right?
If you go back,
I need to know that.
If we go back to what we were at the time of the Aryans, we would be kind of warlike,
the point
but
is
really rural. And the Romans came here and they
came from somewhere.
No, it just mean the system that currently is in place in a country doesn't really reflect on the genetics of the people, but it's more historical of who conquered who and when and why and how.
Well, just because the way I see it is, if this is long enough in the past, I'm not sure that's a very convincing argument to say how come the people in the modern day aren't like they were so long ago. Because, if we're talking 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or even longer, then any number of things could have changed any number of other things. So I'd be open to explanations.
I get that, but the question is who are the original Aryas? And then the question is, what are Aryas? And then the answer is the Aryas were talked about in the Veda, and then the question becomes, where does the Veda come from? And that's obviously India, because there's references to places in Veda.
Are going based off of the idea of it being a race, right?
Yeah, I know, because they are, retarded, basically. No offense.
Okay.
But that's basically a false idea that racists put out. The whole idea that white skin makes you superior, that's not true, right?
That is obviously bogus, but I'm just saying the fact that the system is currently in place in a country doesn't reflect on the past of the people that lived there necessarily.
I mean, you guys have always been pretty socialist, and you're still pretty socialist. You're just ruled by a foreign elite.
No, actually, we're not part of the EU.
You're still run by a foreign elite, though, because you have a central bank.
Subjugated by a globalist system, but that's a very long story, which I would much prefer Jay Willie could clarify what his information is based on and how he arrives at his conclusions, and then you can react to that, if that's cool.
Well, the question is, who are the original Aryas? And a bunch of people want to claim that it's them, but really, the original Aryas came from India, and there's no way to deny that.
The thing I will try to explain is that if the with Aryan as a alternative for an ethno-linguistic meta-ethnicity, also known as Indo-Iranians, right? Because they were the speakers of the Proto-Indo-Iranian.
So there's no such thing, though. There's no evidence of such a language, so it's made up. It's false. The oldest language is Sanskrit, and that's undeniable.
May I finish the
Well,
thesis?
I just don't want to keep hearing all this fake propaganda. I've heard it like 100 times.
I'm not finished.
All right, so
Like,
we'll
you
stick a
can't
pin in that, but
say-
then continue.
Like, people cannot say that I don't want to hear the rest of your story because it's wrong when they haven't heard the story. Like, it's inaccurate. It's a theory. The theory that Sanskrit, because language people doesn't invent language out of nothing. Language usually comes from theory. Is that the Indo-Aryan languages are related to the Iranian languages, and the people who speak that proto language would be referred to as Aryans, and that's the theory I'm going with. So, and now let me finish this. It's that small number of these Aryans, or they were going into the South Asia and India, right? India, Pakistan, that region, right? And they brought with them the Indo-Aryan languages, who have a large vocabulary from Dravidian languages, and then they mixed up with the Dravidians who live there. And now Indo-Aryan 50% of the genome inherited from those Aryans, but they are technically, but the language is also, and the Sanskrit also come from that source, but the Sanskrit still developed in India, and those people groups developed in India, and there are majority of the genome taken from the pre-Aryan Dravidian population. So that is basically the theory that I am going with, and it's not about conquer and divide.
You just don't understand why. It is about divide and conquer. You just don't understand why, because you don't even understand where the word. Well, where does the word Aryan come from?
Well, the point I'm trying to make is not where the word come from.
Why can't you answer the question, though?
I'm just answering broadly, because I can't just say yes or no, because that could be misleading.
I can tell you where the word comes from. I can point to you exactly where the word comes from.
But words come from somewhere, but they can still be applied retroactively. And if you don't like me using the term Aryan to refer to the Indo-Iranians, then I just call them Indo-Iranians, if you prefer that. So let's go with that for the remaining of the video.
Well, I don't think it's a good idea, because you're assuming that there was people moving into India that imposed Aryan theocracy, which is not how it came from India.
I did not say that they imposed Aryan theocracy.
You said that Sanskrit came from Dravidian people, which makes no sense, because according to you, Sanskrit is part of the Indo-Iranian language family. So if Sanskrit was developed in India by the natives, then it shouldn't be part of that language tree. So right there, your argument already makes no sense. Not to mention, Arya comes from the Veda, right? So the Veda was obviously written in India, because there's numerous references to places in India in the Veda. So why would they have come from somewhere else if everything is talking about India?
Only because a language is not the language, but the language, ancestral language, came from somewhere else, doesn't mean that the scripture used in one region with that language doesn't come from that region, right? The Indo-Aryan languages, like Sanskrit, developed in India, which means that the Sanskrit is from India. I'm saying that the ancestral language to Sanskrit would mostly come from outside.
You have no evidence of this language existing.
There's very serious that you can connect.
Look it up on Wikipedia. There's no evidence.
I've looked it up several sources that have.
So have I. There's no evidence. It's all speculative.
Well, you don't exactly know what 100% proof where every single language comes from, but it is the theory.
Yeah, I can.
I think is more credible.
Well,
sure,
wait a minute,
I know,
though, because this is the sort of thing where it's like you can't necessarily disprove a positive. So there might be some theories about how there's an influence on Sanskrit from other sources, and I could kind of see that making sense, right? Like, who says they're developing it from nothing?
It's the Indo-Aryan language. All languages in the Indo-Aryan family come from Sanskrit.
Yeah, but
including your language.
So is this the major? That's the major argument then. Is if we can determine whether or not Sanskrit is the oldest language, or if it came from something else, then this will help us determine whether or not there was a movement of so-called Indo-Aryans, which you believe this
Oh,
migration did not happen, or at least this influence didn't happen. Therefore, that term shouldn't be used. I'm just trying to follow because I'm very.
It's absolutely heretical to use Sanskritic terms and non-definitionally because it's an onomatopoeic language. So you could get cursed just for using Aryan in the wrong context. But yeah.
but this is
Basically,
Indo-Aryan.
all you have to do, Spacepan, is go on Wikipedia, look up Proto-Indo-European language, and it'll tell you on the Wikipedia there is no evidence for this language existing. It is a reconstructed language. And that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
But if it's a theory, then a theory is still just that theory, and there are very hard to find a language of all those theories. Like there are even scholarly debate about French, if French should be considered Germanic or if it should be considered Romance, because the majority of vocabulary is Romance, but so many rules are following Germanic rules, like English does. So that means that if you go by the roots, it's a debate if French should be considered Germanic rather than Romance, right? If we look at Indo-Aryan languages, well, I'm not suggesting that they would be completely purely Indian, but that they will probably also have a huge of Dravidian or originated vocabulary. And so there might be a debate if most of those languages, or even Sanskrit itself, should be considered Indo-European or Dravidian. But
there were no Dravidians. There's no such thing as Dravidians. That's the divide and conquer is Aryan versus Dravidian, and it's also Indian versus European.
That's not how I'm using it. You are strawmanning me. I'm saying that all the peoples there are Dravidian. I'm just saying that some people have a genetic marker from Indo-Iranians, and also linguistic marker. But you can DNA test. So the DNA testing takes the Aryan invasion theory as axiomatic, so all genetic testing is not valid because the Aryan invasion never happened. Well, the fear about the displacement of invasion is a misdemeanor. I'm not talking about a complete invasion. I'm talking about an introgression of vocabulary.
No, there was no ingress of culture into India. All the cultural influence in India was outwards, not inwards.
So are you saying that humans did not originate in Africa?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying no. I think actually, I think that there were, I guess, like two major populations out of Africa and out of India, and they probably all ultimately originated in Africa. But the point of divergence between the Indian and the African branch happened before civilization, so it's not really relevant in civilizational terms. I mean, it's pretty clear we have a common ancestor because we can breed with each other, right? It's not really possible to come from different evolutionary lines and be able to breed together, right? So there's got to be a common ancestor that happened between Africa and India, happened before civilization existed. So it's almost, I don't want to say it's irrelevant, it's not relevant to civilization.
Yeah, but it is relevant because languages predate civilization, because people can speak without being civilized.
I do see on the Wikipedia page where it says no direct evidence for the theory is there.
Yeah, there you go. So that which can
that's not
without
quite the same as no evidence, though, right? I mean,
well, I don't think there's any indirect evidence either. It's just a theory that someone came up with to divide Indo-Aryans against themselves, so they'd be more likely to go to war with each other.
Yeah,
right.
but
we can't. If that is the case, we still can't assume that anybody who thinks there's merit to the theory is necessarily doing it with that intent. But you're saying that people
I'm assuming most of them aren't. I would never ascribe that intent.
Okay, because I just wanted to make that clear, just so that...
No, I wasn't saying that either. I'm just trying to correct the misapprehension, because unfortunately believing these false things takes people away from learning the deeper truth. Like, I'm not trying to blame you. William, is that your name? I'm not trying to blame you. And it's very unfortunate that this is so popular these days because it's being used to fuel very bad ideas.
But what I meant earlier when I said I would like longer statements kind of reacting to one another, I kind of want to reverse this burden of truth. Since as you said, what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So can we switch to you, Jen, providing your sources so Jay Willie can react to that? Like, it feels like you're dismissing a lot of his points, but not saying why if that makes sense.
Okay.
Well, you offered some basis for like the basics of it, which kind of makes.
No, I'm not
sense,
trying
right?
to be a dick here. It's just wordy if I say it in a full-fledged long sentence. What's the evidence for the truth from your for the actual truth? It's
Well, the truth of what? You want to know where the Aryas originally came from?
For example, like you just say Jay Willie saying you were influenced by propaganda. Like, what's the actual correct version of history when it comes to where the Aryans came from, for example?
Well, you have to, if you want to know where the Aryans came from, you have to ask yourself, where's the word Aryan? Well, Aryan is actually not really the word. It's not a word. It's just the correct word is Arya. And so you have to look at where Arya comes from. And the answer is something called the Veda, which is the ancient revealed scripture of the Indians. And you can prove because there's references to places in India in the Veda.
Yeah, which nobody is disputing. Like the theory, it's like not that. Like a lot of people, they basically say that this is not me. Some people that I disagree with, they basically believe in that the idea that Aryans just came and then they just dominated everything, and then they pushed away the Dravidian, which we know which I reject. By the way, we both reject that form, that original. We reject that. The thing I'm saying is that it's a genetic introgression, right? And when I talk to Dravidian people, when I'm talking about the original speakers of Dravidian languages, and the Indo-Aryan vocabulary that have been, the Indo-European vocabulary that have been influenced a lot of the Indo-Aryan languages could have an Indo-European base, but the number of vocabulary is originally Dravidian or originally Indo-European would be, or Indo-Iranian would be hard to suggest, because depending on how you classify languages by base rules or by vocabulary, and that's just the theory I'm having. I'm not having this whole great replacement theory that a lot of people are led to believe, if that makes sense.
It's basically an argument for multiculturalism. It's saying, well, there's been multiculturalism forever. Look, the Aryan, in actuality, the Aryas arose from India and eventually colonized large parts of the world, and that's actually where Europeans come from.
You're subscribing to the theory that Europeans came from India rather than both Indians and European, or Indo-Aryans and
well, that's what the evidence supports.
Yeah, but that's your sources and your theories.
It's not a theory. It's what the evidence supports. It's a fact. The other stuff is just, I don't know what it is. It's propaganda, unfortunately. It's just
what
to
is
confuse.
the evidence, sorry, like outside of the Veda? Like, what is the other evidence? Just to clarify.
Well, there's no references to Aryas outside of the Veda, so all of those wouldn't be considered authoritative. So whatever anyone said about Aryas that wasn't in the Veda would not be considered anything. It would just be considered... this word even come from, right? Like,
but that's etymology.
You don't know.
Like, words can be used retroactively to define things, even before those words existed. You know about that?
Well, the origins of words matter. Where did Arya come from? And the answer is India. And where did Europeans come from? The answer is also India, because I think it's pretty clear India is an older civilization than Europe, and that Europeans do share quite a bit in common with Indians.
Yeah, but like the theory I'm subscribing, they did not quite originate in India. They originate quite more north than that. Not saying in Europe, but like somewhere in between Europe.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a racist theory to demean Indians and to give delusions of grandeur to inferior people who can't actually rule the way Aryas rule.
But
I mean, I'm literally a reincarnated Indian who took birth as a white person because I understood that white people are not advanced enough to be able to take the word of a person who's not the same, who doesn't look like them, basically. And you can't do that.
I'm not problem with the theory of like if I belief system that Europeans came from India, then I would not have problem with that. It's just that I have not come to that conclusion based on my own researched.
Well, just
Like,
ask
I'm
God.
religious. I'm agnostic.
God still exists, though.
What?
I said God still exists, even if you're not religious. You can still hit God up for answers.
Yeah, I can try if you want me to.
Just ask for the answer, and it'll come to you. Do Europeans come from India? And just ask it with an open mind, and you'll get the answer.
But I'm completely what other people believe in that. But personally speaking, I have not come to my own that came from India. But I don't also believe that. I don't believe in the like hierarchical thing that a lot of people misapply to India. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Aryan invasion gets used to just argument that a bunch of India imposed the caste system, quote unquote, and oppressed the native Dravidians. That's basically the argument, but it never happened.
No, it's not my argument. My argument is that a small group of DNA and vocabulary introgressed in India, and that the majority of genome was still left intact from the original Dravidians.
But you can't establish that Aryan even is a genetic thing, or because those were all things were foreigners.
Yeah, but the word is used to like categorize something. That doesn't mean that that word is unjustifiable just because it was foreign.
I can literally find you a book addressing this Iranian Aryan in my last life, as I'm telling you in this life. The Aryas came from India. Europeans descend from Indians, and it's just propaganda. Anything that tells you different is just propaganda.
The Europeans, like, isn't it a middle Europeans?
Question. It's possible that here's what I think. There were movements of people out of India, but they weren't all the same types of people, because India is a very diverse group, like the Gypsies versus a group like the Irish. I mean, they're obviously different, so they would have created a different type of civilization where they colonized, right? So it's obvious that there's like clear differences between these different groups. But yeah, genetically, Europeans are all pretty similar.
But some of these groups completely lost their original language to the point where there's nothing left of that.
Oh no, there's tons of similarities. I can, if you want, and I will. There's tons of words in Sanskrit that sound a lot like even English, and English is heavily affected by.
Yeah, but how can you know if those words were there from the get?
There's been an unbroken disciplic succession of Vedic scholars since the origin of the Veda, which is going back to like the dawn of civilization.
But they are competing, like there are different like sources and theories that would suggest the country.
It's all said by foreigners who hate me and who want to destroy everything that I stand for. So why would I care what their dumb theories are with no evidence to support them?
I'm just not sure if they have less evidence than.
I've got evidence for. I've cited you the evidence. It's the Aryan invasion theory that doesn't have evidence.
Well, that's because the
whole one. There is even a word in ancient Sanskrit for Germany. Anyone want
to? Teutonia?
Zarmania.
Kind of.
Yeah,
like Mania.
I sent you a meme. I sent you a meme before. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, looks good. Let's see. Oh, this is relevant because I mentioned earlier how I shitpost on my main. I'm one of those. It's just a way of being.
I love that meme.
Probably because I'm just like just tactless and everything. Oh, I hate how on Twitter when you save images, it's either like large or small, and then they're not like usable. I hate that shit. Sorry. But yeah, well, because I know I've heard, because the thing is, Gemma, I tune into your streams, but then often like I'll kind of show up late, and I'll catch like a couple of hours kind of in between, and then I'll hear like bits of the conversation here and there. So it's a little bit of like I'll get pieces here and there. So I appreciate that I have kind of this iteration of more of a like the whole theory. But yeah, I honestly like they don't teach this shit in school, at least not at my schools ever. So and like I've encountered so many red pills in the past like 10 years of my life and realized like so often it's the case that virtually everything we're taught is a lie, such that like I can't discount anything if it involves like, yeah, there's a massive conspiracy and they've been lying to you, because I've seen like several examples where that was totally vindicated and where everybody thinks you're a crazy person when you're actually right. So
yeah, I'm sorry to be
I have
harsh.
to kind of be a little agnostic, and I'm kind of entertaining.
Be harsh,
huh?
I'm sorry to be harsh. I'll try to be more polite. I've had this argument like 1,000 times with a bunch of really aggressive Nazis, so I know you guys aren't like that, and I'll try to be more polite. I do.
Yeah, we're pretty
people
chill
that are
here. I guess when I think about it, my streams, I don't think I've ever really had like super heated like big issues on here. The meanest content on my channel is probably if I make a response video to someone, because I mean that's basically just bullying.
Agreeing with them and saying why you think differently.
I'll put the meme.
Bullying is only if the tone is bad.
Now I got a little meme up there. If anyone wants to see. Okay. Well, here's what we should do. We should test this theory that God exists. And I understand some of the iterations of God don't like being tested.
I'll prove God to you directly. I just sent you the link. Yeah, sorry about the delay. I sent you the link that proves that Germany has a name in ancient Sanskrit.
In Sanskrit. Interesting.
And it describes the region that we currently call Germany.
Well, look at the link. I sent it
where did
to
you post it?
Space.
Oh yeah, there's one.
I can actually post it. I will.
Harmanideza?
It's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a word in Sanskrit for chancellor for Germany, born in Germany, country of Germany, modern name of Germany, and country known today as Germany. But if it's in Sanskrit, could some of these be words that were developed later? Was that one of the questions we had?
But it's something that could also be possible is that if the term Germany came from the term Germania, which was from Latin, then from Greece, and they could have got it from Sanskrit because the Macedonian Empire reached pretty far, and so
I can also prove to you that the Pythagorean theorem comes from the Shalba Sutra.
But they're directly connected, because there have been things in science that have been reinvented countless times over history.
That's true, but there's an actual proof of the Pythagorean theorem in the Shalba Sutra, and Pythagoras himself was known to have studied in India. So there you go. There's my proof of the perfection of God. It's the quantum periodic table. So take that, atheists.
Yeah, so I have heard that's something I'm a little bit more familiar with. The quantum, because there's parts of your argument that I think make a lot of sense, but then there's other parts that I don't necessarily fully appreciate just because my science background is very weak.
Just so you know, I am not trying to push anyone to become religious. I want you to be yourself.
Well, how would you self-describe? Would you describe yourself as like a deist?
I'm oh my god. I'm a monotheist who believes that science should guide religion, basically. So I think that religion is basically, you should think of religion as an ideological structure that orders society, that not all religions are created equal, and that the best one is one that is scientific. So like, for example, like legalizing drugs causes consumption of drugs to go down. So it's actually better than be legal, even though it's counterintuitive. Like that'd be an example of using science in statecraft.
I was more. I think he was more asking about deism with a D, like God exists, but it doesn't interfere with the creation.
Yeah, the way I see it is deism is a little bit like a lowest common denominator of a belief in God, right?
That makes sense.
I'm actually not familiar with this word, so I'm going to look it up and see what it's actually, because I've heard this term before, and I don't want to misrepresent myself here. I just want to see what the okay. It's saying belief in the existence of a supreme being, specifically of a creator who doesn't intervene in the universe. I don't believe the universe was created, so I'm not sure if I can be a deist.
So you're more, well, I guess that's more consistent with like conservation of energy and things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Fuck.
be,
Why didn't I
right, and
realize
that's another thing too I've heard is that very often like the atheist versus theist argument will come down to people saying, well, everything can't come from nothing, and it's like, who says it had to?
Exactly. The fact that we exist is proof that the universe has always existed, because the ex nihilo belief is fallacy, right?
Yeah, and I guess the other thing too is, do we have examples of things ceasing to exist, right? Because that would be because if we're going to make an argument that like existence had to come about from a default state of non-existence, well then surely we should see some examples of things which did exist that become completely eviscerated to the point of like no aspect of them whatsoever continues on. And I don't think that really
Yeah, I think
is
there's no
true.
fucking evidence to that regard. Like every part of science that I understand basically is based on a finite or infinite mass of actual atoms that exist indefinitely.
Well, atoms have like
Matter
disorder.
has always existed and will always exist. Like
One of the
we can't
precepts.
show anything that disproves that, as far as I know.
Yeah, what you're describing is called the conservation of energy. And this has been established as basically it's the closest we can establish to a law, because we have no evidence of it not working, and a ton of evidence of conservation.
Well, and then I know this is the basis for your defense of reincarnation is that we have because you're not a materialist. You believe in two kinds of things, right? The body and the mind. And the body doesn't cease to exist. Therefore, why would we assume the mind does? And it has to be reduced and then channeled in some way. That's kind of is that a fair kind of restatement
That's pretty
of it?
fair.
Okay.
The distinction I draw, and again, whether I'm a materialist depends on how you define materialism, but the distinction I draw is between the manifest and the quantum. So your mind is basically a
A quantum
photonic
computer, right?
Exactly, that's what I call it. It's a photon-driven quantum computer, and that is something that we can't, like, we wouldn't call that manifested, because like I can't pour you a cup of that, right? So that's where the distinction is. Is it something you can see and touch and feel, or is it something that exists in like you can't touch photons type thing?
Okay, so that might be, we might also call that like it has ontology. Although I think ontology might be a little bit broader. So I think manifest is a good word. It means there's like a physical component to it.
Yeah, so I have actually been called a materialist before, because I don't accept these like these like supernatural things. Like everything I state, I can give a scientific basis for. So I've been called a materialist on that basis. But I don't actually think I am, because materialist to me is someone who thinks that there's no distinction between their brain and their mind.
Okay.
Well, the mind is used what occupies your brain, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that animates your brain. It's not your brain. It's not the brain itself, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
because
the way I see it is my use of the term materialist actually might be non-ideal, because the way I see it is that if you believe that everything that exists is material, and then that which is sort of like non-material or conceptual, it's dependent, or it's like given rise to, or it's somehow contextualized within a materialist framework, then that would kind of satisfy my definition for materialism. But that might, I don't know, it might not be the clearest way of using the word, and I think that would be the understanding that people might call you a materialist, which is a little bit different. Because if I call myself a materialist, that's kind of what I mean, is like ghosts and spirits don't exist, and then the mind is conceptual.
I don't know what you mean by conceptual. I guess the evidence I use
abstract.
for abstract. So like not measurable.
Well, I guess abstract things. Yeah, are they measurable? I guess they have to be physically present to be measurable, right?
You can measure that the human body produces what's called a bioelectric field. And my position is basically saying that experience of consciousness or some subset of that is responsible for your experience of consciousness. That's my argument. And the counter argument to that is that no, the field is just there for no reason and the consciousness is coming out of your brain. That's, I don't know if you saw when I
If I might interject, like for the context of it all, like in your view of all this, the Big Bang happened and planets formed.
The Big Bang is from Kabbalah. I don't believe in mystery religions from the desert, so I definitely reject the Big Bang.
What about evolution as a whole?
I accept quantum evolution, and I have a proof of it. It's far superior to natural selection.
So the life on Earth started as like primitive life forms thing.
I can using chemistry, I can explain how amino acids would have precipitated spontaneously from non-life. And then the point at which it becomes alive is when it actually has this quantum field enveloping it, because the quantum field is what tells the biological matter how to arrange itself. It's not just arranging itself magically from nothing. It's being instructed to arrange itself based on a quantum field, which is informing it how to arrange itself. Like I can even derive how cell division happens based on this quantum field.
So then when does consciousness begin and how?
Good question. So you could call that quantum field, you could call that like a rudimentary consciousness, okay? So imagine a cell, and then it has a quantum field surrounding it, which is light that's entangled. So it's like a sphere of light that's bounded to this cell. And the reason why matter arranges itself that way is because we have a bunch of sunlight coming in, which is putting a bunch of energy into our system, which is allowing for multiple chemical arrangements to happen. And ultimately, those chemicals will rearrange in such a way as to maximize entropy. So basically, life is a machine to sort of cool down the Earth or to reduce the temperature differential, which is a law of entropy. So basically, the consciousness would be, it's not a consciousness like what we have. It's just a very, very simplistic consciousness. It's a quantum field, how to arrange itself. And then the cell gets more complicated, and over time, that quantum field gets more saturated with light because the cell is always eating food, and food stores photonic energy in its chemical bonds. So there's a transfer of photonic energy from food to the quantum mind. And then when that quantum mind, so the way quantum states work is that they're disparate. So they don't connect linearly. They're like spheres sort of hanging in the air around each other, the way the atoms of the periodic table are adjacent but different. Like hydrogen and helium are right beside each other, but they're totally different because adjacent quantum states are not necessarily right beside each other. So eventually, the adjacent quantum state to the first quantum state that was filled, which is the sphere around the cell, will breach to a new quantum state. And when that quantum state is filled, the biological organism will have to change the way that it looks in order to fill that quantum state. And that's when the event of evolution happens. So the filling of these additional quantum states is actually quite slow, which is why evolution progresses. There's like no evolution, and then there's like a huge jump in evolution. That's called punctuated equilibrium. And the way to understand those is actually quantum transitions as the quantum mind is getting more complicated. So human consciousness and the ability to actually like perceive ourselves as conscious involves a folding of this original conscious field back onto itself so that it can actually measure itself. So that's what we are, is like just like a progressive folding of this original sphere.
So I guess
does that mean?
I want to understand
Sorry.
the quantum leap, like an evolution, with like an analogy. Would the idea be like, let's say you have a house, right? And in the house you have like 3 people can live in it. It has 1 bathroom, it has 1 kitchen, it has the necessities for 3 people. And in theory, you can just like add another room to have more people sleep in it. But eventually you hit a certain threshold where it's like, oh, now we need to have another bathroom. And then eventually you have this like massive building full of people and it's like, oh, we need like an office to deal with this issue, and we need to have our own thing here. We need to have our own laundry rooms. We need to have multiple. We need elevators now, right? So it's kind of like you hit a point where it's like our current infrastructure doesn't support like the raw amount of it, and then you need to add more structures to it. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. So this is the diagram that I've got for
I
it.
was just wanting to ask, like, so the fact that certain life forms evolved facilitates the more primitive forms to stay the same?
Well, in some
Versus
situations that would have
tardigrades?
to be true, right? Like for example, humans. Like humans became more advanced, and then this has actually facilitated like cows being very simple, just like walking meat factories. Is that fair? Like, would that be a fair example of what you're talking about?
There's evolutionary progress.
No, it just mean like the way you put it. Very, I know you're trying to accommodate us with a more simplistic phrasing here.
Well, mostly myself. I'm trying to.
No,
Or do you mean she is trying to? Oh.
she is. Like
yeah,
you're trying
I
to
think
find
that I'm
good
the lowest
metaphors,
common
and I much
denominator. Like, I'm the
appreciate
one
that.
really pulling us down to the explain it like five.
I was getting the feeling Jen was trying to put it in as simple terms as possible. Maybe I'm wrong because I understood it.
I am, but it's a very complicated it's a very
Just
complicated
asking-
idea. So
my
I
current
understand.
question is just so the fact that certain biological life forms evolved to accommodate that process allowed the lower life forms or the less complex life forms to stay that way. Like how does that connect? Why are there still bacteria if there's a drive to accommodate for that extra photonic energy?
That's actually a really
Does-
good question. And the answer is because it is possible under the right conditions for life to arise from non-life. So we, as humans, became sentient way in the past. And these bacteria haven't been sentient for as long. So they haven't had a chance to evolve, but they eventually will.
Well, if there
So
are
the bacteria we have are new compared to what we evolved from?
It's possible, but it's also possible that you can get what's called like a static convergence. Like, have you ever heard of living fossils, like animals that haven't changed in millions?
Like
in,
sharks
long
or
time? Yeah. So that there does come a
fucking,
point where
what's the name for those fucking fuckers in the ocean that sting you
I know what you're
Stingrays?
thinking of. They're
and
really
have no brain?
Jellyfish.
Yeah, thank you. Jellyfish. Those fuckers seem to have not evolved for millions of years, I think.
Yeah, so that's possible as well, because it's possible that there's just nowhere else to go energetically, like that they've reached a point where, because this evolution process only happens when there's a pressure from the environment. So if there's not a sufficient environmental pressure to drive that, it won't necessarily happen. The point is that it can happen, and when it does, this is how it happens. And just to come back to this idea of the bending field, oh, it's bent. This is
I can
not a
actually
good
rotate it
time.
on my end for the actual stream.
Thanks. Yeah,
So then
sorry
so
about
you
the
don't
thing.
don't fix it because then that'll. Oh,
I'll
I
fix
made
it.
it the wrong way. Wait, I said I rotate again. Transform. Flip vertical. Is
Yeah,
that
so
right?
we also have like a base spherical field, but it's folded over onto itself, and so we have like these 5 to 7 subfields, and those are what were called traditionally chakras, or something like chakras, and that sort of shows you how the it's still basically a spherical geometry.
Oh wait, so these spheres here would actually correspond to like humans' chakras also, because that's how they usually are. Right? It's like a straight line of circles.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure if the chakras are the balls themselves or the points where they're like twisted. I'd have to do more research, but yeah, it's kind of an abstract science at this point. But I'm trying to make it more concrete of a science.
But
This
the
reminds
folding
me.
actually.
I remember Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So the folding actually reminds me of two things. One is Carlos Castaneda, who I don't know if he's a fraud or not.
He is.
He is a fraud, but in the German language there is a thing about folding, about Einfalt, which means it's folded once. Is someone who's einfältig is someone who's simple-minded, and someone who's folded twice, Zweifler, is someone who's folded twice and he doubts everything. So I always wondered where that came from, like this idea of folding a personality.
Well, now you know. Yeah, I've got it finally rotated the right way. Sorry about that. I think this is more clear. But yeah, basically
I had it upside down. I thought it was like not in English. I thought it was like in Sanskrit. So I was like, this is really crazy. Okay, there we go.
as much as I can. What that is an image of the spinal cord, and it shows how the spinal cord exists to bind this photonic field, because free photons just expand at the speed of light. And so what the body does is restricts that expansion. So the light field comes from the food we eat, and it's what basically props up our bodies against the force of gravity. And this drawing here is meant to illustrate, like, I don't know if you could see the spine there. It's like twirly line going up the middle.
The dark line in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. So it's meant to show you how the light field is actually shaping the spine.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So basically, we're really, really, really complex relative to a single-celled organism, but the nature of our consciousness is still ultimately just a photonic field. It's just that our photonic field is so complex that we're able to do things like have conversations like this, which a single cell obviously wouldn't be able to.
Sure. Okay. So I remember a few months back, I saw people on my Facebook feed arguing about whether or not there are colors to the chakras, and it was a very, very heated debate. And I'm wondering if you have any opinion of that, because they'd argue, for example, like you have the classic picture of the chakras where there's like different points that all have different colors, and they say, oh, this is the red one, this is the yellow one, this is the green one, whatever. And then like some people were arguing, no, this is bullshit. There's no association of color. This is just a visual issue. And other people argued, actually, you can totally feel colors of... Oh, no, it was actually colors of auras they believed in. And they were having a very, very heated debate. And I wonder if you have any opinion on if that makes any sense.
Well, auras is one thing. Auras is basically picking up on the subtle aspects of someone's quantum mind that would be too subtle for most people to pick up on. Like, if someone's in a bad mood or something like that. Like, that's what I would more consider aura. It's like the total field. Associating a color to that, I don't know why you'd associate a color to that. I suppose you could. The utility of associating a color to that would be like a compression scheme. You know what I mean? It's like an easier way to sort the information. It's like, oh, you're so purple. I feel really green today. If you had an actual set of qualities that corresponded to all these colors, which of course I doubt this exists. So I do think it's a bit of a LARP. If you could associate colors to chakras, I would say that the top one would have to be the highest energy. So it'd be like a purple all the way down to bottom one, which would be red. But I don't really see the utility of associating a color to something like that, because it's like...
Is there if there's no vibrations involved, colors are basically just frequencies of vibrations of light, as far as we can see and understand.
So it's a metaphor.
If there's no vibration involved, colors make little sense.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Like, I think it's a bit of a LARP. It's just something kind of, I don't know, people find this stuff interesting, but to actually understand it scientifically is quite difficult. So I don't know that these people would have any way of doing that, because there's not a lot of actual good information about the scientific basis for these things.
Yeah, and I think that's probably about what I anticipated the answer would be, is that the nature of color and its relationship to light would make it like something that doesn't necessarily translate exactly. So then, but you could see people using it as in a metaphorical way, because they have associations built into colors that they can then use as like a shortcut. But I think we know, like, culturally, colors can have like radically different meanings. Like, there might be some similarities, but what I really hate when stuff from science is colored. Like,
frequency is if there's frequency and you want to visualize that, you can use colors, but technically the rainbow, which is basically the scale of vibrations or frequencies, it doesn't really look that good to show things, so they just arbitrarily pick colors based on how they think it would look nice or what they feel like this should have this color. And yeah, just say you arbitrarily pick colors and it doesn't mean anything, please. Just either try to figure out some connection to how these frequencies work, and if you can't make it, just say it. I just really wanted to show that this is red and this is blue because people associate this with blue and this with red, so that's why I chose those colors. And don't be a dick about it, you know.
Yeah, right. Like I suppose it's a really clear way to understand the difference between the subjective and the objective. Just that subjective experiences can be useful, and of course they're true to a person's experience, but you can't like enforce it or impose it as like an objective thing.
Well, you could do that. We as humans recognize a certain meaning to colors naturally. Like if you see red, I don't know if you guys have ever gone into a room that was painted red, but it will like make you feel a little weird if you sit in a fully red room, because we're just sensitive to red because it's the color of blood. And it's the same with green. Green's very relaxing because it's the color of forests, and same with the blue of the sky. So there's like a natural association, but in terms of like what you could use this color scale for, like I don't know if you guys all like, it sounds like, I don't know what your name is, the person with the avatar of the monkey, but it sounds like you have a background in science. So I'm assuming you know what the electromagnetic spectrum is.
Yeah, he goes by just Fleegan.
Fleegan? Yeah. So do you know what the electromagnetic spectrum is?
Yes, to a certain degree.
So you're aware that
I'm not an expert.
Well, there's some very low frequencies, and then there's some like the lower frequencies are like radio waves and stuff like that, like very long wavelengths.
Yes.
So that would be the low energy ones, and then all the way to the high energy ones, like cosmic rays. So they're all electromagnetic radiation, different frequencies, and we can only see a very tiny band of this, as you know. So if you wanted to like use that band as a metaphor for the total electromagnetic spectrum, you could say like, well, the cosmic rays are in the purple section and the radio waves are in the red section. And you could do that. But again, it's just a metaphor, and it's a bad metaphor because we have this inbuilt recognition of colors as having particular meaning, i.e. blue, green, red.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of when you try to apply colors to musical frequencies like vibrations of air, because of the repetitive nature of those frequency relationships, colors become meaningless outside of what we perceive, because they either oscillate so fast that it would just become brown, basically, or they oscillate so slow there's just a huge area of red and then a huge area of whatever other color. Like, I don't really feel like applying color to anything other than light makes much sense, but there's some concepts where it kind of relates to, at least when it comes to frequencies.
Well, we are talking about electromagnetic fields because consciousness is an electromagnetic field, but in spite of that, I still think the colors is a bad metaphor.
All right. Well, I'm glad I got some information on that. This stream definitely has a much more sciencey and history themed kind of slant to it, which is cool because I'm not sure. Like sometimes we get into more scientific things when Ashley brings up like genetics and stuff like that. But then otherwise, my streams are usually a little bit more lowbrow. So I appreciate this is a little bit refreshing. I'm at like the 3-hour mark now, and I'm thinking that's kind of a good length for a stream. And I don't know, I should probably. Here's the thing: I can't say like, "Oh, I need to do something," because I literally like don't have a schedule.
You could just say, "I really want to play Final Fantasy IX, man."
We should.
You
we
can
all need
just
to
say
ask
it.
God. I almost beat Final Fantasy IX. Oh, people, don't friend me or follow me on Steam because I'm really self-conscious about people realizing how many hours I'm playing these stupid old retro JRPGs. Because it's embarrassing. I got 100% on Final Fantasy X-2, which is torture, absolute torture. It's like the dumbest, most horribly designed game. It's an absolute dumpster fire. None of the characters are likable. The settings are just a hot mess. Like compared to Final Fantasy IX, playing them like next to each other, it's just like it's like night and day. But Final Fantasy X-2 has a really fun battle system. And it has aspects of it that are playable. But like it's shit like talk to a specific NPC before another one, because if you talk to the other one first, then it's going to cut out one of the cutscenes, and that's 0.2% of your completion, and therefore you'll have to either restart the game or finish it and then New Game Plus to pick up that 0.2%. And it's like shit like, oh, make sure you hit the X button at this certain part in this particular cutscene to hear a thing. Oh, and this one NPC, he's going to talk for a really, really, really long time, and if you interrupt him, you'll lose a percentage point for that. There's a specific item, if you don't pick it up in a specific room, even though you can go back to that room, the item just won't be there, and therefore you have to restart. And it's literally like 200 little things like that, and you have to just like follow a list and make sure you don't miss a single thing unless you want to replay the game like 6 times to get 100%.
Dude.
And I don't know who thought that was fun, but
I was
apparently
considering
because I did it.
when it was new, but now you completely turned me off from ever playing that game. Well done.
It's awful, but like it has a cool battle system. But it's like they tried to make it appeal to girls, and instead they just made something that's like really tacky and awful that only homosexuals like. Because it's like a Charlie's Angels thing, because they're all girls. Never appeal to a
target audience too much. Just do what feels right.
You got your garment grids, which you equip your dress spheres to, and you play pretty dress me up in battle by switching jobs and switching your outfits. Yeah, it's like it's the game is a
you're
spectacle.
Fucking better than me. I was streaming Final Fantasy VII, and it took me 10 hours to get out of Midgar. Like I suck at video games. It seems.
Dude, when I was replaying Final Fantasy VII, I fucking died at some point in Midgar, and I was like, did I get retarded? Because I don't remember these games being difficult at all. And the same shit happened to me in like Final Fantasy VIII and in Final Fantasy... Actually, not in Final Fantasy VIII, because I did the no-level style, but in Final Fantasy IX, there were like specific points where I was like, I don't remember this boss being this hard. I don't remember like the fucking ruby dragons that showed up at one point. I like checked online and they're like, oh, you're supposed to be like 20 levels higher, and I'm like, oh, I guess I haven't been grinding. I've just been like plowing through the game, and it makes it really, really difficult. I don't know. Or I'm just old, but it's like, how does getting old make you suck at games that require no skill? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know.
I guess they do require skill.
Well, also in Final Fantasy X, the international version, you have the expert sphere grid, and I was like, oh, cool, this will be an excuse to replay this game because I've never had that before, and I'm gonna like deliberately make the characters have like retarded builds that make no sense, right? And I figured, like, okay, if the game lets you do this, like, it should still be playable. Like, just grind for a little bit, and then you'll be fine. But, like, oh my god, just all my characters in that game are just a complete hot mess. And I had so many situations where I just had, like, nobody that could do anything, and I had to, like, really, really tediously, like, grind it out. And I like, made Final Fantasy X, like, absurdly difficult for myself by choosing the expert sphere grid and, like, deliberately making the characters retarded. So, yeah.
Though on a more serious note, I would like to someday understand how I don't know what you guys think about morphogenetic fields, but how stuff like movies, video games, songs, why they are the way that they are in a certain area because seems like the late 90s, early 2000s were a very creative time in many regards, and I feel like we're a fucking stale, really washed up time right now where there's little things that I can get excited about anymore. I still find excitement.
I have a theory on that. Because it coincides with the exact same time where movies peaked. And I think it has to do with the advance of the technology. Before the technology got to the point where it was really good, they were putting more into the other aspects of the video game, which made it more engaging, because really good graphics actually has diminishing returns on how enjoyable a video game is. Like, why is Tetris fun? It's not because it has good graphics. It's because it's just fun, because it's like organizing things for certain people is fun, right? It's super simple. Like, why is Super Mario Brothers cool? It's like, this is fucking cool, right? But once they got into the point where they had the really advanced graphics, all the energy seemed to go into just the graphics, and the remainder of the games was just like you say, kind of stale. And I think it's the same with movies, because there was a real peak in movies where they were putting a lot into the storylines and they're really good, and because they didn't have the CGI yet. And then when it got the CGI, it just became basically pure technique and not so much storytelling.
And also that before movies went digital on filming, they had to have shit figured out much more clearly before they started actually running real. I actually
exactly.
completely agree with that. Like the abundance of these technological advancements, it removed a certain aspect of, okay, we really have to figure this part out to a T, because the other part is very limited, and if this part is not good enough, it will fail.
Well, I think though maybe part of the issue is just that you have certain like really dominant mainstream media that are able to promote themselves, and like it becomes this thing that like everybody's heard of, and that becomes how we define like the quality of entertainment right now. But there is like an undercurrent of a lot of like indie developed video games and independent movies that just aren't as popular or profitable, but are actually really fantastic. And it's probably just the case that we're not searching hard enough.
That's actually true. That there's still good music. Movies, I wouldn't say so much. Video games as well. Like the indie scene produces things with their limited financial that have to focus on those aspects that the big movies, big albums, big video games, they had to focus on that in the time of limited resources where it just wasn't there, while now they have all of those resources and they're cheap, while the indie studios or the indie producers or the indie music makers or filmmakers, they still limited by their lack of funding. Like an idea, a concept, that's actually something you can work out without a lot of money. But CGI effects or fancy 3D graphics for a video game, or a production that is able to acquire like a sample from a very popular song, that's basically the bigger companies these days. So actually that's a good thing for the smaller companies. But you have to find those people, and I would have assumed it would be easy to find those people in the days of YouTube, but they're trying to bury all the original content from small producers these days. Like they're buried between masses of paid content.
Yeah. Yeah, because that is like a thing. It is kind of fun to go onto Steam just to kind of look around and see what's there and never buy anything. Sometimes like that's more fun. Like shopping for video games and never buying any is actually kind of fun through Steam. I don't know.
Well, I couldn't afford buy much things because I'm just because I'm moving and paying for school. I'm a little tight on cash, so.
Well, that's the thing is I go like a whole year plus without playing any video games at all, and then I'll pick one up and I'll just like binge, just do like a 70-hour binge over a few weeks, and then I'll be good. But
I could never do that.
well, nowadays I have to because I can't go outside and I can't spend money, and I need to minimize spending money by not wearing clothes and not showering and just sitting here and drinking water.
But like, isn't wearing clothes super funny? Because I love wearing clothes. Like, I have always I have this like I don't know if I told you, but I think I told the other guy that I really like clothes. Have I told you that before?
I don't remember. I mean, I'm
No,
sure. I mean,
haven't.
gays are
It's-
supposed to like clothes. I mean, I don't dislike clothes, but they're
That's kind of
they're
true.
kind of a
When it comes
hassle.
to-
It's kind of nice to not have to bother.
No, but I do like it because especially because I like the cultural input the clothes can have, and I also like the clothes that reflect one's own interest. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's why I get very interested into those specific ideas of clothes, especially the cultural component, because I find that to be super interesting.
I always felt that like men's fashion was very very limited and kind of boring, at least in like the modern times.
Oh gosh, I don't like fashion. Jesus Christ, I think fashion is so no
Although when I see
nice.
sometimes people will post like images from like really crazy high art, stupid concept style of fashion, and I think that's actually quite fun to look at because people don't realize that that's not meant to be just like worn around, and people are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this crazy thing." Oh, they think men want to wear this, and it's like, no, like they're using clothing in an artistic and dramatic way to like give you a sense of what their overall like movement is, you know, and like I don't understand why that's so hard for people to get, but I guess that I don't know, that might be something that gays get. That is kind of
I've
like a
got
domain
a
that the gays
picture of
keep.
what I want to see men's fashion go back to, the classic eternal good taste, high heels. Had, basically yogi
Never
pros.
forget, high heels were for men first.
Have a
Yeah,
look
but
at the
only if
picture
you're
I
in
got on the
battle.
screen right now. That's me in my last life. I was fucking killing those high heels.
Nice heels. No. Here's kind of clear why I don't like fashion. Like, I don't like fashion because I don't like the whole idea of clothing being temporary. Like, I believe that it's like if I'm gonna make a clothes or something, right? I want that to reflect any form of the cultural of the region or one's own heritage. Like, I don't like it when it's like oh, it's new and cool and something just invented. I don't know. I don't like that very much. I like it when something is like coming from something older. You know what I'm saying?
Lately, I've been wearing like big flowy Japanese weeb pants because they're very comfy, and I think that's very fun. And I'll wear that and like a really flowy like hoodie kind of thing, and then I feel like an RPG character. And
But
I
I
walk
always
around and I look like an
wonder-
anti-magic battle sage. Like, what else could I possibly be?
It kind of reminds me when I was like 16 and I somehow bought the same boots basically that Cloud wore, the same pullover and the same pants. Like I was basically cosplaying Cloud from Final Fantasy VII in real life just as an attire. And I got very positive reactions because I didn't have like the sword and the arm guard and shit like that. But
Oh
it's
yeah,
like
no, Cloud's outfit is very
certain
reasonable. Like a nice vest and then big flowy baggy pants tucked into some boots. Like that's pretty reasonable. Like there's that was the thing is there was like utility in the way that they dressed in FF7. There was some logic and utility to it. Same thing with FF8, and then Final Fantasy 9 also made sense. It was like fantastical, but it you could kind of see it. And then Final Fantasy X was like, what the fuck were they thinking?
Yeah, I don't really know. Like they fired a lot of people or put them on other projects.
No, what
I
it
don't
was
know.
was Yoshitaka Amano. Originally, they were using him for character designs, right? So that's why the best Final Fantasies all use Amano's designs for the characters, which are Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy IX. And then you look at the ones where it was mostly Tetsuya Nomura, and like he was responsible mostly for like 7 and 8, which is fine, but 10, oof. Oh, and 10 too. Oh my god.
He went on steroids or something. I don't really know what happened to his
I
brain
think he
there.
just knew he could get away with whatever he wanted. But
Maybe
I
that's
also
what
think
he always wanted to do. Like, you know, the guy who made Ren and Stimpy, John Kricfalusi?
I don't know about the guy, but I know about like the show.
There's a very interesting DVD Spike TV made with they let him do another like few episodes of Ren and Stimpy without Nickelodeon telling him no whenever he wanted to
well,
go
because
off.
even what they put on Nickelodeon was bad enough.
Yeah, but the thing is, he needed those senses. He needed those like to keep him in check. Like some people need a balancing force to weigh against their crazy creativity. Because when he was free to do whatever he wanted, it was just so sexual, like insane.
Well, and he was French, right? That was a French-sounding name.
Oh, Kricfalusi.
Or is that? What did
I
you
think
say?
he's Hungarian. born in Canada, I think. Like most, like a lot of American creatives, at least in comedy and arts. A scholar of Ralph Bakshi, worked for Ralph Bakshi for a long time.
Huh.
The thing is, like, he needed the people at that kids network to tell him, no, you can't do this. He really needed that to work against, to give his more extreme ideas, just to throw them out and, hey, come again, go back to the drawing board. This is not acceptable. You cannot have a scene where Ren basically butt fucks Stimpy.
Yeah, I
with
saw
a chain,
that scene. That
with
was
a saw.
like, yeah, that was so weird. And like, it wasn't even subtle. It was.
And it wasn't funny either. Like,
It was really stupid. Anyway. Okay, but I was gonna mention.
I was just alluding to the fact that Tetsuka probably also needed like someone telling him no, and then with 10 they told him, you can do whatever you want, you did great.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what I
Like
was
with
getting at.
asymmetry, asymmetry works for like maybe a one shoulder pad kind of thing, right? We don't need half pant, half short. Like that's stupid.
Yeah, that was so.
Yeah, just an absolute eyesore. I also hate that in Final Fantasy VI, whatever character is at the top gets to be the main avatar. And like all the other Final Fantasies have portions of the games where you control other characters, and obviously we see those sprites on the main map. So I don't understand why they didn't they let you have whatever characters first be the one you walk around with. Especially for when they re-release these on like PC, on Steam, and everything. Like why didn't they add that? That would have been like a really cool addition. It would have made it kind of fresh.
They did minimum effort. I've read a lot about this.
Well, I can forgive them for Final Fantasy VIII. I forgive them for Final Fantasy VIII because they like didn't have the original files and had to like mosaic it all together after the fact, even when they were making the game like in the first place. So like that makes sense. But 7 and 9 and 10 and 10-2. Especially 10-2, there's only 3 fucking characters.
No,
I guess some of the
I
mini
think
games though care.
they
about
lost
some of
all
them.
the data for all the games. It's very suspicious how they lost all of that data. Like, why? Why would you? Oh, you needed the hard drives again. Like, Final Fantasy VII cost $100 million to make. You could have afforded to store those hard drives.
Right. Okay, so but I wanted to. So anyone, please attempt to pray to God and ask God for the answer to what I should do next, because the world is my oyster and I need to take these awful circumstances and make something good out of it, because there's a potential for doing all kinds of things. So I need to figure out, do I need to stay in Hong Kong or should I fuck off to somewhere else? Should I go to America? Should I go to the Republic of Georgia? Or maybe I should just like fuck off to Japan or Taiwan.
Well, Georgian men are pretty cute, and they have a word with more than 6 consonants called chkpud, which means that which peels us. And they also call their mother Tad and their father Mom, and they have the unique alphabet. And all they have 2 break. All of that is pretty fantastic, and that's Georgian. And they share the name with the state, so if they tell you live in Georgia, then people might still believe you're in America, so you will not be doxxed, so which is also a thing. And so why not Georgia?
It really is a question of which languages you actually know outside of English and Chinese.
Nothing really. I can kind of I can decipher Spanish if I'm sitting there and looking at it and it's written down. I can kind of figure it out. So I have like a latent amount of like Spanish that I could kind of know. I don't think I want to go anywhere like Hispanic though. Nothing personal, but I'd rather either stick to Asia or maybe Europe. But
why not Africa?
Yes.
I could go to Africa. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't really know much about Africa. I don't know where I'd go in Africa. Also, Africa's
Ask me, I know
hot.
everything about Africa. Trust me about that.
Well, you're the one who says
Oh, Africa,
go to South Africa, which I'm I think I'd rather go to Wuhan University than South Africa. No offense.
Yeah, but that wasn't like I didn't recommend South Africa personally.
Yeah, you
Like,
did. You said it's the best place. That's what you said.
well, that's just my
Wasn't-
opinion.
Well,
But don't
okay,
you
that's
show
fine.
for Namibia a lot? Like
Well, I show for all African
for
countries.
German speakers.
Yeah, that's because they have German speaking there. So, like, if you want to live in a, it's like,
Yeah, but Derek
speak
doesn't want to
German.
learn German, man. Like
Well,
that's a
German.
hard language.
I have some German heritage, and I think it might be kind of fun to learn a little German. I've listened to a couple of Rammstein songs, and they are catchy. Germany actually consistently has fairly decent Eurovision entries. Miss Kiss Kiss Bang was terrible, but besides that, they're pretty okay.
and also like,
If you're willing to learn German, they don't pay teachers that well. But you might want to go into translation.
Oh,
I
but
don't know.
I can't translate anything unless I already know the language.
but also
Yeah,
if you
that's the
speak
problem.
English, there are other African countries. There's not South Africa. Like, if you, for example, Zambia and Botswana are pretty good countries too, and they're English speaking. Which I've been considering moving to those countries several times in my life, but I didn't feel like.
Well, we don't have to decide now, or I should say, I don't have to decide now. But we'll try to
You don't have
ask
to
God,
decide.
and we'll see if we all come up with the same answer, and then that'll be proof of God.
Also, you can just go #learn to code, man.
I don't know if that's really going to be viable. I think that's going to be a lot of effort, and we've already missed the peak period where that's valuable.
And also, if like when you talk about German-speaking countries, the only reason why I think one of the reasons that I like Brazil, yeah, and Namibia because of the German language is because I know that the German speakers there tend to be a little more. Well, they don't have the Western degeneracy that exists in Germany, so that's a plus if people want to speak German and not live on German law, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an idea. Although in terms of
Yeah,
like
because, like,
language,
I like
think
the
that
German
my
language, but I don't
preferred
like to
thing
live
would be
around
to just learn
German
Mandarin in Taiwan. Because in
But,
Taiwan
yeah,
you get
but
to
all the-
cheat, right? Taiwan, it's like being in America, but it's also like being in China.
There should be some consideration for the regions where the Chinese import a lot of workers, and they have to learn English. I don't really know where they would have to learn English.
I know where
though.
that is. Want to know where?
Where?
Most African countries.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I should
Always
go there. I
come
should go there
Africa
so I
with
can
me.
be part of the Blasian ethno-state that's going to take over the world. Because I think that's what my money's on. Sorry, white people. I don't trust you. I don't think you're going to last much longer. I'm defecting early. I do believe
Yeah.
there is a master race, but it doesn't exist yet because we haven't invested enough in eugenics to unlock the master race of humans. But it's basically, I think it's going to be Happas, basically. I think it's gonna be just like in that Murdoch episode Yellow Dawn. It's not gonna be 50-50 white Asian. It's gonna be like probably just a little bit of white, just a tiny bit, and and then whites will be fine with that.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with the concept of. I'm still struggling with the concept of finding a woman that's more white, more tall, and more intelligent than me, that is willing to procreate offspring with myself if I really want to do these passive eugenics. Also, I kind of like Southern European women that are not complete bitches. My future
Yeah, it sounds like
projects are
that sounds like you're asking for too much. She's gonna
No,
have to have like an
the
eye patch or a
moon.
peg leg or
I can-
something like.
I can get that. Like, I could get that myself. If I wanted to, but I'm gay. But if I wasn't gay, then I would get that, and I would have it before the decade's over. It's not very hard. Talk to girls, women are easy. But that's just because I'm gay, I guess. But like, you know, what I'm saying. I don't think it's hard.
Yeah, Paulo
Not
knows being
even
in
your
North
dick.
Africa doesn't sound very good, and I'm like, yeah, I don't. Like, I'm skeptical. I might just be prejudiced, but some skepticism. But I don't have to decide now because I'm gonna be in self-quarantine for 2 weeks. So I have 2 weeks of just being a neat, yeah, and applying for stuff, and we'll see what happens. All right. Does anybody have any closing thoughts on anything we've discussed? Because otherwise, I think I'm going to wrap this up, and then, of course, anybody listening or here presently, just if there's like a specific topic you think that we should talk about that would be interesting, you can message me. However, you have my contact information, or if you're in the Discord, just tossing it in the library. Lately, I don't know what's the deal with the Discord. I labeled all of the rooms of the comments section very, very clearly, and they correspond to rooms in like a building or a home to make it easy. But people are very confused. They're all chatting in the guest room, which is specifically for introductions, or they're chatting in the library where we're not supposed to comment. We're supposed to talk about them in the lobby or the drawing room.
You have a very specific, almost how a house should be used.
My Discord is so much like simpler and intuitive than like anyone else's, I think. Probably just because I made it, but
Have you seen mine?
yours is retarded. Yours is completely
Mine has
retarded.
one chat and one voice chat. It's literally have almost nothing in there. It's like one regular text chat and one voice chat. That's it.
No. You have text channels. You have Maja Pit. I don't know what that means. You have Nasa Goreng. I don't know what that means. You have penis. I do know what that means, but what do I post there? Penis? There's not a lot of penis in there.
But
I'm confused.
that's not my
What's Kuma
personal
Sutra?
server.
What's Kuma Sutra? I don't understand.
You-
What is
you-
Tikka
I think
Masala?
you're
It's an
talking about
inside
different
joke.
server,
You don't even
Derek.
know what it means. Nothing
We're talking
makes
about
sense
different
there.
servers. Okay, there
It's
are
not
two
the right
servers I
server.
have, right? That's the server I have with Chris and another guy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name on here.
Well, and you
on
made
stream.
me an admin there too, so I guess it's technically like
Yeah.
mine too.
Yeah, that's the server, but I have a different server that is my own server that is very simple. Like the server I have called Tikka Masala, that's like the server that me and the other guys we name the things whatever we like it.
Okay.
So we named
so
it.
you have one that's a
Oh.
little bit
I-
more. I mean, that's fine. It's a funny group over there.
Okay, now I just feel excluded as fuck, man.
I just like posting my selfies in there because everyone thinks I'm pretty.
Wait, are you not in that server?
Nope.
In your other server, I'm
Oh
not.
my
but-
god, I need to add you.
Okay, well, we'll
Because
make
all
a
the
big
requirements need to
incestuous
make it-
network of everybody joining all the other servers. I told Jen she should make one, but like you and Duvid should have one.
Duvid does have one.
Oh, Duvid has one. Oh,
Yeah. I don't tell people that I'm actually on Discord in the first place because I'm.
yeah, because I mean, I get that Discord is like has its reputation.
I don't even get it. Like they were deliberately looking for furry, hentai, right wing stuff. Like Discord is vast. Every social media platform has weirdos. I don't know if statistically Discord is worse than Tumblr was. I mean, they did get rid of a lot of stuff. Made a lot of my Brazilian friends really sad because apparently they got all of their wank material off of Tumblr, which is weird. I didn't need to know that, but now I know, and knowing is half the battle.
Yeah, it was really great to meet you guys and nice to talk to you guys, Spacepan, and look forward to the next time. Hopefully you can come back on the show sometime. And as regards to the new job, I do wish you luck finding one, and maybe a suggestion is to like look in fields that you didn't think about that maybe your skills would line up, because you do sound pretty smart, and there might be some job that becomes available because of the coronavirus that's like some new industries hiring. So there may actually be some opportunities if you look outside of what you normally do. Just slightly, like the same skills, but just in slightly perhaps different job.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'll have to cruise around, make some T-charts. But yeah, thanks for dropping on too, and yeah, and I'll try to be more present on the internet now that I'm settled back into my home here, and now I've outed myself as having absolutely no excuse for being on the internet 24/7. So Actually, I want
Also, we will assume you're basically naked all the time.
I've written one page of a little mini novella that I aim to be about 100 pages that I have written extensive notes on and have like a whole plan for everything in it that I just haven't like literally written. And I could have written that by now if I had had a better, I think, mental state instead of just kind of moping around like a retard for so many weeks. So maybe I'll see about putting a dent in that because that'd be kind of cool to finish, and then I can say I'm an author. And then I'll put
Definitely.
it on. I'm gonna just toss it on Minds for anyone who wants to read it.